Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another evening of epic racing action in the one and only Skip Barber Community Trophy Season 5 as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. This series of course proudly sponsored by both none other than Musical Money and Old Kit Racing Team, and it is the series that aims to keep the Skippy alive. Indeed, what it does every year is absolutely incredible. Plenty of rounds of racing have unfolded so far this season, and as we march away towards the end of the first half of the season come the end of today, well, what a pair of rounds we have in store, because we have made our way to the US of A for the first of many a race evening here in the United States of America, and we open up by taking a trip back into the past, and we have made our way all the way over to the US state of Michigan, and in particular to the city of Detroit for the once populous Belle Isle Park circuit, also known in full as what was none other than the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle. Well, this circuit, located in the park from which it takes its name, is a circuit that was replaced in 2023 by the current iteration of the Downtown Renaissance Centre circuit, but once from 1992 all the way through to 2022, it was a circuit that played annual host to both IndyCar and the IMSA SportsCar Championship. Why was it so much loved, many would ask? Well, the main thing it was absolutely loved for was the fact that this circuit was absolutely uncompromising in the challenge that it presented to drivers. Not just necessarily for its length at 2.35 miles, alternatively its 14 quarters. It makes it sound quite straightforward when you put it like that. And also with the walls looming large, well, like any street circuit, the walls are always there to catch you out. However, what makes this circuit unique and what made it so challenging to any car that took its way around here was the fact there's so many road surface changes, lap after lap, corner after corner. You've got a combination of smooth tarmac, old tarmac, also what is concrete slabs out there as well. Add it all together, sometimes the transitions occur in mid-apex, and very quickly your car, no matter how stable a driver you are and how smooth you are, you can very quickly find the car's going to shake loose on corner exit and the walls are waiting to catch you out. And for our drivers today, that's exactly what they've got to watch out for here, because even the smoothest may go astray and make the way into the barriers. But as we get set and ready to go racing, we welcome you all to this live broadcast from the circuit side as you tune in tonight on YouTube at none other than youtube.com and search for Paul Walsh Productions or PWP, and you could be tuning in there. In the content booth, you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, and I will bring you all your racing action as it unfolds tonight and indeed over the entirety of the season. And as for our schedule for today, times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time, UTC, what we can see is our schedule is as follows. In 13 minutes time, we'll be making our way into our qualifying session, only 6 minutes in duration today. We expect it to last approximately 10 minutes end to end when you consider how we go into qualifying out of it. How we should alert you is a slightly shorter qualifying session in terms of time available, but that's because of the format. It's a special format tonight, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that in due course. We'll keep you guessing just for a little bit longer. After which we'll then make our way to the grid at just before most likely 5 to 8 this evening for the first of our 2 races. It will be the round number 11 sprint race, and that'll be 20 minutes in duration, after which we'll take a brief breather before returning at what will be approximately 20 past 8 this evening for the 30-minute feature of round number 12 of the championship. And come the end of that round, well, it will definitely be the first half is complete, and we will see how our drivers are all stacked up as we get ready for the second half of the season, which will immediately follow in a week's time. Indeed, there is no mid-season break, but this definitely will feel as though it is the break point for many a championship campaign. And as we make our way into these pair of rounds, let's tell you a little bit about the story so far. Because as we can see, we have made our way along the calendar all the way now down towards the halfway mark. Rounds 11 and 12 today, because it is none other than Sunday the 25th of January 2026. Last time out in rounds 9 and 10, we completed our brief tour of mainland Europe, whereby we'd gone from Rudskogen Motor Centre in Norway all the way to Netherlands for Circuit Zandvoort. And along the north coastline of the Netherlands, what we got to see on the 18th of January was a session of racing which was absolutely incredible. In the fact that Steff Hermann in the end finally nailed his first win of the season in the sprint race and has therefore extended his championship lead, as you'll see very shortly. Well, he may have been the one who took to the spotlight in race number 1, but as for in race number 2, well, we had the closest ever finish in the series history, a win by only thousandths of a second. In fact, I think it was 1,000th of a second for Marcus Byfeldt ahead of Adam Miles and Bryan Kelly. It was that close between the three of them, and it literally was a photo finish at the finish line in the feature race where it all came down to strategy. But what it has meant, of course, is that everyone right now is absolutely chomping at the bit to pick up even more points today. But as we come into this round, many of you may notice on the right-hand side of your screen the qualifying format for tonight, a one-lap shootout. That's right, we have the first one-lap shootout qualifying session of the season. We've got 2 more later on in the season for what will be rounds 19 and 20 at the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit, and coincidentally in Australia as well for rounds 23 and 24 in our season finale at the Mount Panorama circuit, or Bathurst as it's more commonly known. But here today we see our one-lap shootout on the streets of Detroit, and therefore this is going to put a lot more pressure on our drivers than ever before in qualifying. But more on that very shortly as to why. Because after this round, of course, so this pair of rounds will be continuing the theme of the USA for what will be another 3 race event, whereby in rounds 13 and 14 we head to the Summit Point Raceway, and there we'll be seeing our drivers out in the West Virginian countryside enjoying what will be 2 races absolutely packed with scenic views, but they won't have time to look at those at the speeds they're going at. And then rounds 15 and 16 we make our way to Ohio for the Mid-Ohio Sports Car course, and then it will be on the 15th of February that we complete our tour of the US of A with rounds 17 and 18 at the Long Beach Street Circuit in California, before we then finally make our way over to the Oceania region for our Australian conclusion. So as we then make our way into this round, or this pair of rounds, let's tell you a little bit about the championship standings after what has been now 10 rounds. And as we can see in the Drivers' Championship, here is your top 15, and Steff Hermann now leads by exactly 100 points after 10 rounds of racing ahead of Marcus Byfeldt. Now the big question really is going to be today, can anybody actually bring Hermann back down to earth at this point? Now, not to say that his ego has been overinflated, he's been very modest over the course of this season, even though we hadn't had the chance to interview him, and I'd love to have a chat with him at some point over the course of the season. I'll tell you one thing, he has definitely made sure to take his points in moderation. He has had the most consistent form of everybody, with 7 podiums in 10 rounds, and will always finish bar 1 inside the top 5. It's an absolutely unquestionable record of consistency, and that's why he is your championship leader. Marcus Byfeldt, meanwhile, sits in second, having now made it what has been a grand total of 3 wins in 8 rounds he's participated in, and 1 pole position as well. And what he'll be hoping for today is that he can use his second place spot to really try to get everybody else in line, and then get everyone to queue up behind him as they all try to chase down Hermann. Because at this point, it's starting to become the question, can anybody actually chase down our championship leader, or will they all be scrapping over second place while he stays plenty of points away? Bryan Kelly will be eager to try and move forward back into second once again, after he came out of the racing at circuit Zandvoort, whereby things didn't quite work out in what was a sprint race, although he had a much better feature race, although he was gutted to lose out, given he was the lead car in the freeway fight for the finish line, albeit, of course, with the slipstream around circuit Zandvoort, being the leader is not where you necessarily want to be. Geoff Randall as well, only a point behind there, and his hope is going to be back on the podium today, if not taking a win, given the fact that so far this season we've yet to see Randall take a win, but we have seen him take those 2 incredible podiums, of course, at what was Alton Park all those rounds ago. Adam Miles sits in 5th on 197 points, and what you can see the delta there right now between 2nd and 5th is only a grand total of what is 24 points, and that's the problem at the heart of this championship right now. It's a good problem for us to have as viewers, ladies and gentlemen, because it means right now all 4 of those drivers, they all want to be second place to chase down Hermann, but because they're stumbling over each other, that's why Hermann's got such a gap, and a gap in turn has opened up between what is Miles and Adam Tompkins, who's fallen to 6th on 151 points, not on the grid last time out, but we hope to see him back in the near future, ahead there of none other than Daniel Ortuga, with Nathan Wade, Christopher Geros, and also there Gordon van den Bergen completing the top 10. But everywhere you look, the fights are growing, with Ortuga, Wade, and Geros Jr. all contesting that 7th place spot, with van den Bergen also in the mix. Then we have a further 6 points to Remco Pleisser in 11th place there, and unfortunately for him, it was a difficult day at his home circuit, and indeed it did seem as though the Raging Turtle racing team had a rather nightmare day compared to what they expected at circuit Zandvoort, and they'll be looking to bounce back strongly today, as it was also felt for Titus de Jong. Dennis Johansson, sadly we won't be seeing him on the grid here due to personal circumstances. He's all okay, we've been informed. He's just got to go to work, unfortunately. And indeed, we'd love to see him strut his work out in the Skippy, because he has proven to be one of the quicker drivers. And then, of course, he did take that maiden win of the season at Brands Hatch all those weeks ago. He sits in 13th, only what is 8 points ahead of the growing form at the Studio Ghibli machine of Josephine Becker, who's 14th. And then we do have Peter Suapanki completing your top 15, with the old Git Racing team driver really still trying to find his momentum, given his fact he's had some good qualifying performances, but in the races it hasn't quite gone right. But coming outside the top 15, and to complete the top 30 of your Drivers' Championship, we do see Neil Gardner there in 16th place, 10 points ahead of George Mattock, and Mattock continues to impress as he moves forward in the field, ahead of Martin van Ikkelen, and then we do have your top 20 completed by Chris Wayne, who's only behind van Ikkelen based on result countback, and Marcus Dorner, who completes that top 20 on 57 points. He's 10 ahead of Jesus Cabal, but in turn, it is a further 9 points, well, in fact, a further 11 points there, when I do my maths correctly, to Simon Wareham, and then we do have Ludwig out in 23rd place, only ahead of Kedin Budgen based on result countback, back, with further 3 points to Tom Payne, and it's Fredrik Neptun, Tim Hendrickson, Jeroen Velling, Klaus Biedermann, and Terry McGrath for completing that top 30. And a huge shout out there to Tim Hendrickson, because he made his debut last time out, and he was one of the home heroes making his debut alongside Jeroen Velling. And well, for Hendrickson in the end, he put together an absolutely incredible run of form in both races. Couldn't quite make the podium nor the wins, but he definitely was a force to be contended with, specifically in that sprint race. Unfortunately, it went very, very wrong in the feature race for a few drives right at the start coming out of turn number 3. But for Hendrickson, that sprint race is going to be one he'll remember for eternity. But that's how the top 30 of the Drivers' Championship stands there coming into tonight. And as for our host circuit then, here we are. It's the Grand Prix layout of the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle Circuit, located in the park within what is the Detroit City in Wayne County in the US state of Michigan. Well, huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for the brilliant simulator which immortalizes this circuit as we'll never see it again, but also it's absolutely brilliant track maps that bring the circuit to life. And this two-dimensional image is absolutely spot on, because there's very little elevation change here, as you'd expect for a street circuit, given the fact it runs over what is the roads and pathways of the park. And instead, where it lacks an elevation change, it makes up for variety in terms of its corners and also its track surface changes. For as our drivers make the way across the start-finish line and in towards the sweeping exit of turns 1 and 2, they'll find there'll be a brief bump in the road at turn number 2 that they need to get absolutely right as they change the road surface over. And as they then make their way down the long stretch towards turn number 3, we can expect 3, perhaps even 4 wide into the opening right-angled right-hander on the opening lap. It's going to be all the way onto the brakes then. As they emerge, it comes into the tightest section of the circuit at turns 4, 5 and 6, initially at least, because they come out of the final of the 3 right-handers, or indeed what is the right-angled corners, 2 of them right-handers and 1 of them left-hander, then make the way onto the back stretch. Next now, it's another bump in the road coming through turn number 6, and that's normally one of the spots where we can see cars into the wall if they get it wrong and don't smooth out the road surface transition. But get it right, it's then the sweeping run down towards turn 7, and there we do see another very tight section of corners. Turn 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, which essentially see our drivers do what is a little bit of a bump in terms of the layout of the circuit, where it's a right-hander followed by a triplet of left-handers, and then back into a very sharp 180-degree, almost hairpin right-hander at turn number 11, only then to make the way for the 3 right-handers at turns 12, 13, and 14 to complete the lap and do it all over again. But watch out at turn number 13 as well, because our drivers make the way through the fast right-hander. They'll find it's a lot narrower at the apex than they expect, and therefore we could see a couple of cars brush with the wall on the exit. But as we get ready to go racing, and a quick reminder of the rules, and as we can see today, car setup, as always, this is an open setup series, whereby drivers bring a setup of their choosing to each and every race round and session. Car fuel loads, they continue to be restricted to 47% for all race day sessions, and as we can see with regards to qualifying, it is the 1-lap shootout format today. That means the session is closed firstly, so everyone goes onto the circuit in an isolated instance of the circuit. We have no risk of anybody interrupting or impeding another driver or trying to use the slipstream off of one of their rivals, and each driver beyond their outlap has only 1 flying lap to set their starting position for the sprint race. If they invalidate it, it's over. If they end up in the wall, it's over. If they don't get it right, they will qualify poorly, so therefore they've got 1 chance to get it right, and that warm-up lap is going to be just as critical as the flying lap to get all the tyre temperature in, and they've got to have the car as light as possible on fuel by the time they start that lap in order to go for broke. In terms of our races, all the races shall commence by a standing start as it's a tradition of the Skip Barber Community Trophy. We do have 1 fast repair available in each race should we see our drivers need it. A driver-through penalty shall be awarded at 17 instant points. Get to 21 and they will be disqualified. And as for how we set the grid for the feature race for the uninitiated, it is set based on the finishing positions of the sprint race, or we invert the top 15 finishers. What that means is the winner of the sprint, they start on 15th place for the feature, and we continue that inversion all the way down to the 15th place finisher, who starts on pole for the purposes of the feature race. As for those who finish 16th and downwards in the sprint race, you guessed it right, that's exactly where they start for the purposes of the feature race. And do keep in mind there is 1 mandatory pit stop in the feature race where drivers must take on fuel. But without further ado then, ladies and gentlemen, let's make our way back to circuit side, because that's been a recap of how we've got to this point, and also we've done enough with the rules and regulations today, and all our drivers right now where they're almost ready to attack the first circuit of their visit to the US of A. And Bryan Kelly here won home style. He'll be hoping for a much stronger day today, albeit to be fair, I think he's undersold himself a little bit this season, but understandably he is a driver who is very keen to keep pushing forward, and you can understand in the interviews why he comes across a little bit as though not necessarily downbeat, but definitely feels as though there was more out there. It's always the way when you're trying to push for the very best spots here in the Skip Barber Community Trophy. All these drivers, they are highly accomplished in these machines. They have been racing them for the best part of what has been at least the last 4 to 5 years, if not the last decade on iRacing, because the Skip Barber Formula 2000 car has been on the service for a long time, and it has been, of course, at the core of many sim-to-real-life events and series that iRacing have officially hosted in collaboration with Skip Barber, the company. And, well, what we have found is that these drivers absolutely love these machines. They love the Skippies, as they affectionately nickname them, and we can't blame them for it. So I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, I've never actually driven the Skippy on iRacing, but this series always makes me want to get in my simulator and jump into it, and perhaps I will actually follow up on that sometime this year. And if so, well, we might have to get a little feature on the broadcast as to how exactly I found it during my first laps of the Skippy, but more on that another time perhaps. But as we do see the clock count on down, Titus de Jong decides to park up, and Steff Hermann, our championship leader, well, only 17th in practice, but perhaps right now he's saving all the adrenaline and pace for the qualifying session. Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, here it is. It is time for the one-lap shootout, the first of 3 for this season. And so here we go. One lap to decide where they all line up. Our drivers immediately all make the way into the pit lane. And as they do, well, they'll very quickly be making their way back out of it and getting ready to attack the circuit. So what exactly can we expect here in this session? Well, there's going to be a lot of pressure on, but 6 minutes. The good side of this is the fact that our drivers do have a bit of time here to get themselves mentally composed. Don't expect everybody's going to immediately get in the car and go out there. And I look out my commentary booth window, and I tell you, Adam Miles has yet to leave the pit lane. So is Simon Wehrman and Noel Ritchie Robinson. Our drivers will need to get out there at some point, but not all of them will jump in the car immediately. They'll want to give themselves a little bit of mental breathing space. There'll be identical conditions on the circuit for every driver here, and this really comes down to who can put it together when they are put under the pressure. Tim Hendrickson is definitely going to be one to watch after we saw his impressive performances at Circuit Zandvoort. Will be a very different nature of circuit today, and therefore that could completely change the complexion of this session in itself. But as we do say hello there to Talkie T, who says tyre warming from Try Hard Tim, and indeed I think we are going to be seeing quite a bit of tyre warming from many a driver here. And in terms of how can you warm the tyres in these cars, well, weaving from side to side enables you to do quite a bit of tyre warming. One other thing you can do on iRacing, indeed on many a simulator, but particularly on iRacing, is you can do an effect which is called brake dragging, albeit it has been scrutinised heavily over the last 5 to 6 years, particularly for what has been major iRacing events, such as the 24-hour event, where essentially you are holding onto the brakes whilst applying a little bit of throttle, and you're essentially dragging the tyre against brakes and throttle input, albeit you wouldn't do it normally in a real car as far as I'm aware, just a simple reason that goes against logistics of the machine, but that is something that can be done, although I suspect the tyre weaving method is going to be the main one here for our skippies, to be fair. And as Hendrickson makes his way to the line, well, we're going to jump on board with him for a flying lap, ladies and gentlemen, and he takes us around. So here he goes onto his one and only lap, breaking his way in towards turn 1, coming down to third gear, 80 miles an hour as he approaches the apex, and now transition from right into left here, hits the bump in the road, here he goes, and there's the road surface change, and rolls out to 2 absolutely as smooth as butter. Now bringing the car gradually over to left here, very gently, so that way he doesn't lose any straight line acceleration. And now as he gets close to the wall here, looks for his brake marker, and it will be there at the 300-yard board. He comes all the way down to second gear, mounts the apex curve briefly, rolls the car through, that's legal to put a tyre wide, and now in towards turn number 4. Chucking the car into the right-hand area, taking plenty of apex curve, and now over to the right side for turn number 5. Here you've got to brake nice and early, get the gears down to second, and now gently get the throttle back in as he fights with the steering wheel, and now in towards turn number 6. Open up the right-hander as much as you can, and now onto the throttle here, and hope the rear grips up. And Hendrickson does exactly that as he now makes his way down towards turn number 7. He's cleared the first half a lap, and at this point, now for Tim, he's been taking a deep breath here, thinking, right, I've got the hardest part done when it comes to how close those walls are. Now he's got the hardest part on technical ability. Braking out with the 300-yard board, down to second gear for turn number 7, exits the corner, keeps it over to the right now to open up turn number 8, on the brakes once again, staying in second and pulling the car through. Now get the throttle in for a short period of time, build up to third gear, lift off the throttle slightly to position the car through 9 and 10, over to left he goes, onto the brakes hard, down to first gear, and through up that right-hander at turn number 11, and now in towards turn number 12 he comes in. 9, there's only 3 quarters to go. Look to his left for his brake marker, and he'll be braking there. It will be the 200-yard board, just a slight tap of the brakes, get the weight on the nose, now run it as close as possible to the wall for as long as you can. Through 13, full throttle now all the way to the line here as he comes with the kink of 14 very shortly. Pit lane on your right, and here's the kink, and as he heads towards the line for Hendrickson, it's been a brilliant lap here, but where does this put him? And it puts him right now. Daniel Tuga takes the initial time at the top, and it's a further 10th ahead for Hendrickson then a 43.734, but more times are now to come as they're all going to come and piling in. Peter Serpanki crossed the line. He's the lowest so far for 44.934, but Titus de Jong goes under him there by the best part of a 10th and a half. We've got more times coming in. Renko Pleisier goes 7th. Meanwhile, Bryan Kelly on home soil goes 3rd, and we do see a few more times still to come, including Adam Miles here, and we expect Adam to be one of the fastest given his pace so far this season. And then again, anything can happen, and it only takes one minor mistake as he drives his way through turn of 12 into 13. But Miles right now is looking very much clocked in. I can tell you, his first sector, purple. His middle sector, purple. Right now for Adam Miles, this could be it. This could be pole position for Miles. He crosses the timing line. And it's second place in here for Adam Miles. It's not enough. His final sector was not purple compared to Hendrickson. A 43.755, 17 thousandths out on Hendrickson. Hendrickson now holds the baton here. Can he withstand the test of the rest of the field? As we see Chris Wayne down in 16th place there. 3.2 seconds off the overall pole time. Gordon van den Bergen goes up to 9th. Frankie D goes up to 15th place as he continues to build up pace over the course of this season. Simon Wareham comes to the timeline here. What can he do in number 71? And the answer is going to be, well, as he crosses that line in the end, he does not set a valid time, so Wareham's had a tap wall somewhere that's invalidated a lap. He'll be starting from the back of the field. Tom Payne comes across the line as well, and as he does, well, what's Payne going to be doing here? And the answer is going to be, he's not going to get a lap on the board, and well, for Payne, that's going to be a frustrating one. That's not worked out at all as he makes his way very gently now down the road, and what understandably here, I think he's just going to be using this time to give himself a little bit more familiarity, so I think he'll be a little bit annoyed at that. Now, we do apologise there for the overlay refreshing itself. Don't worry, don't adjust your TV set. That's on our end, not yours. It's just because they had some driver data being loaded for a newcomer who's joined it right at the last possible moment. Here he is in the number 25, but better late than never, I say, with 20 seconds left on the clock. Oh! And a big drift through turn number 12, and that is Heronen Ganzeveld. And, well, in the end, he has to tow to the pit lane with damage, as Chris Wayne will take 18th place. And the other shocks out there, well, we also do have a little bit of a surprise with regards to none other than Geoff Randall. 8th was the best he could do in this qualifying session, and meanwhile Marion Cladera goes 18th right at the end. But that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, and well, what a session it has been. It's time to head to the grid for the first of our 2 races. So as the drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up then for round number 11 of Season 5 of the Skip Barber Community Trophy, sponsored by Musical Money and Old Git Racing Team. Tim Hendrickson takes his maiden pole position, the privateer from the Netherlands, ahead of one of your main championship contenders, Adam Miles, who then was pipped to the post by 17 thousandths. On row number 2, we have Daniel Atuga from Sweden ahead of Bryan Kelly. And then on row number 3, starting 5th, is championship leader of Steff Hermann, starting once again in a solid spot ahead of Nathan Wade. Marcus Byfeldt, the second place man of the championship, starts in 7th. A difficult qualifying session for him, just ahead of Geoff Randall there, although Randall 4 tenths down and really earmarking the rest of the field. What a split there in the field from 7th to 8th, and then just behind him there by the best part of 400ths was Sickhead Racing's Gordon van den Bergen. Kevin Budgeon completes the top 10 there with a season best qualifying performance, and we do see in 11th place Christopher Garros Jr. just ahead of Peter Suapanki. Behind the Old Git Racing Team driver, then we Raging Turtle Racing's Remco Pleisier ahead of Titus de Jong, his teammate. They line up together on row 7, and on row number 8 it's going to be Frankie D and none other than Neil Bamber. We then have on row number 9 David Elliott and Pedro Maron Cladera, and Chris Wayne and Muscle de Hint complete your top 20. Behind the Old Git Racing Team and the privateer meanwhile, on row number 11 it's going to be George Mattup with a difficult qualifying session, no valid lap, nor was there a valid lap for any of these drivers. Well, firstly Heronen Gunzeveld, and also there for Simon Wareham and Tom Payne, and last but not least in this grid it is going to be Noel Richie Robinson, and they will all start at the very back now, and they've got work to do from the outset. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, the grid is almost ready to go here. We're just waiting for 1 or 2 more cars to get into spots. And, well, in fact, they're all in spots. Here come the lights. And so for the first time here today, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4, it's 5 in lights. And it's lights out and away we go here at Belle Isle Park for round number 11 of the championship as Tim Hendrickson gets a good start. Adam Miles immediately cuts across there to cover off Daniel Atuga, who looked to have the better launch compared to the second place starter, but as they make the way into turns 1 and 2 further back, we've already got a few two wides here playing out very quickly, including Pedro Maramon Cladera here looking to go battling, but as he comes over the rise at turn number 2, well, oh goodness me, that's Chris Wayne. Well, is that Chris Wayne round? No, it's not. I do not think it is. I think that's Marcel de Hint who's had a bit of an issue, so has Ronan Genzenveld, but meanwhile back to the front, and as they all make the way into the braking zone here for turn number 3, we'll get a replay of what happened there shortly. A few drivers coming loose. I think Wayne did lose the rear of the car potentially, but nothing more than that, and well, we can still see plenty of battling going on inside and outside that top 10 as they now make the way into the tight sequence of turns 4, 5 and 6. George Mattock a little bit further back trying to go on the attack here versus David Elliott, albeit I think it's actually Elliott who's trying to overtake Mattock in fact as they come through 5 into 6, and Mattock in the end does clear him as Wayne dives up the inside here versus the Irishman and immediately moves into 19th place there. So Chris Wayne trying to make a bit of a recovery because he lost a couple of places at the start, and Elliott will tuck in here as Simon Wareham also gets ready to go battling, but down towards turn number 7 they come, and as they do, well, those who want to make steady progress, they probably won't fight in this lap, they'll wait and bide their time, whereas those who do want to make some places early, well, they'll run the risk of essentially costing the time between themselves and their rival to the cars in front. Battling around here costs a huge amount of time, as it does at any street circuit, because the fact the racing line is very narrow. It's not a too wide racing line around here, unlike say circuit Zandvoort, where the fact most of the circuit you can go too wide, and it's only at certain points where you cost yourselves a lot of time. We've got Van den Bergen on the inside of Budgen here into 12, a bit of contact, and Budgen in has to lock up the front left brake in order to avoid going to the barrier. I think there'll be words between the two of them after the race. Van den Bergen thought he needed to go for it then and there, and well, his perspective will definitely weigh up versus Budgen's perspective on that one, but still, as all the drivers now make the way on to another lap, sometimes you've got to take those risks, and we can see Frankie D here, well, he's had a good start to the race, up to 14th and 15th, on the back of Remco Plaisir, as a bit of defensive driving going on there for Gersh Jr. versus Budgen. He's under a lot of pressure with Gersh Jr., and we can see him fighting with Budgen. Budgen's got ahead, but meanwhile at the front of the field, Adam Miles and Tim Hendrickson, they're swapping places into turn number 3. Miles takes the lead of this race, with Hendrickson and Atuga right behind him now, and it's an 8/10 of a second gap to Bryan Kelly. Now Kelly, who started 4th, he's still where he started. In fact, the top 10 has barely shuffled around. However, I think everyone here is playing the game of follow the leader. As meanwhile, oh, that's getting very feisty there. That's Budgen versus Gersh Jr. tapping in towards turn number 5, and still Budgen weaving side to side. The car not quite happy, and I wonder whether that initial contact with Van den Bergen at turn number 12 on the opening lap has perhaps just simply unsettled the car or the driver a little bit. It may have unsettled both, but Budgen trying to get things together right now, and those road surface changes, well, we are not exaggerating them. You see how Budgen's car is weaving around. That's not him at the steering wheel necessarily, that's the car being bounced around with the change of the concrete to the tarmac. But as he comes on through turn number 7, he tucks in and he seems to have got himself controlled and composed again, but you can imagine at any moment it could happen to any one of our drivers here, and a brush with the wall would only make it far, far worse. And it's not been too bad so far, it must be said, that all drivers are negotiating the Belle Isle Park circuit very well, and well, long may it continue as we do see the time gradually continue to trickle away. Albeit the 20 minutes, it sounds a long time, it's not in reality, and come what will be very shortly, we'll suddenly wonder where all that time has gone. Well, they do say time flies when you're having fun, and all the drivers are definitely doing so as our leaders make the way onto lap number 3 now, and Adam Miles still leading as we look to that lovely distant camera shot there. And what you're starting to see now is that Miles, I think, is trying just to open up that gap a little bit more to the two behind. And I think his hope will be at this point is that if he can create a gap of about half a second to 6/10, he'll be able to essentially dictate that Hendrickson and Atuga need to fight each other a little bit more. Well, that'll be what he's hoping for. And Steff Hermann, meanwhile, hooks up the inside of Bryan Kelly in towards turn number 3. Kelly complies, and the idea here being that they don't want to lose any time. And Kelly goes to the switchback in towards turn number 4, and Hermann just went a little bit too deep, so no change whatsoever. But then we do see what is behind Nathan Wade and Marcus Byfeldt queuing up on this, and Geoff Randall at the back of the group. As we jump on board, looking down over the cockpit for the 107 driver. And well, he at this moment is probably going to be thinking to himself one thing and one thing alone, and they should take your time, get closer little by little. But as the Briton makes his way down the backstretch here, all these drivers, of course, they don't want to pick fights if they can help themselves. But given the fact that Kelly and Hermann had that little exchange, it has caused the gap to the top 3 from them now to open up to 2 seconds. And that's how quickly you can lose time around here. But coming through in towards turn 7, 8 and 9. If Randall's going to go for a move, he's going to need to be very decisive about it, because you have to lunge on the braking here unless your rival in front gets a very poor run from one corner to the next. That's why you do have the long straights here to open up those overtaking opportunities, but otherwise it's see an opportunity and put your car on the inside and pray your rival has seen you. But then again, all these drivers are typically race for each other, whether it's in the iRacing officials or in the Skip Barber Community Trophy for the best part of several seasons and several years. They all know each other incredibly well, and that's what really makes it such a great series. And the fact they're not just there to win, they're all there to respect one another as well, and a lot of them are friends off the circuit as much as they are rivals on the circuit. But coming a bit further back, looking back to 11th place man Budgen, after being passed by Gerris Jr. and was a bit of a firm fight between these two. Well, number 18 driver here, I think he was just shaken a little bit by what was the close call between himself and Vandenbergen on the opening lap, but he has now seemed to have got himself back together here, and it's not easy to do so when you're battling around such a street circuit, and Gleisier and Suapanki trying to stay with him. Titus de Jong, meanwhile, he's over the back of Frankie D. D makes it very clear he's not here to fight as he pulls the car to the wall very quickly. And I think trying to say to de Jong, if you think you can go faster, do it, but make your mind up very quickly as they go two wide through turn number 3. And meanwhile, Budgen here looking for a move over the inside of Gerris Jr. He's trying to fight back here. And well, these drivers, of course, going to be at the forefront of the inverted grid at the end of the day when we go to the feature race. Remember, it's the top 15 inverted grid, so therefore fighting for 11th through to 15th is going to dictate essentially what will be the top 6 spots of that next grid we'll see here at Detroit. So it'll be interesting to see where all these drivers see themselves in that order. But looking a little bit back to George Mattock, he looks to try and get a bit closer to Titus de Jong as they get ready to go into the next braking zone again. And Mattock here definitely taking his time at the moment. I think we are gradually seeing Mattock get more and more comfortable with the car once again. Keep in mind, of course, he did have that significant break from the Skippy, and he has been relearning as he's returned to it this season. He's been doing a brilliant job. He's had some great performances, including what was his performances at none other than Donington Park. But now here in Belle Isle Park, well, qualifying 21st, but he's already up to 16th. Can he go a little bit further and get himself towards the front of the field for the next race? If so, I think he'll be grinning like the Cheshire Cat on that one. But meanwhile, this is going to make us grin here, as here comes Renko Gleisier, looks up the inside of Budgen, and in the end it's all for naught as Gleisier has to back out there, otherwise risk making contact. Well, these drivers right now, they're keeping each other guessing, and here it's all about the faking out and all the psych outs from our drivers, trying to see whether the guy in front is paying attention and knows what move is on versus a move that is not on. But from there, back to the front, and here is Hendrickson versus Miles. They swapped the positions into turn 3 on the previous lap, and now they're going to swap them again as Daniel Ortuga still stays with them. Now, if this was the feature race at this point, you would want to be Daniel Ortuga in this trio, because he is just staying behind, and you would imagine he would be saving fuel. Not so in this one, in the fact that he will here be not having any requirement to save fuel unless he started the race with not enough fuel to get to the end of it. That's always a fault. However, drivers don't normally do that. That is a very risky approach to open up the first race of the day. But Tuga right now, I think he's just playing patient and waiting to see what happens between the leaders over the next 7 to 8 minutes. And in the final 3 to 4 minutes, that's when he'll start to formulate his plan and put it into execution as to how he plans to pass them. But speaking of passing events, we did have some major incidents on what was the open lap for a couple of drivers, and we're going to take a trip back in time and see what exactly happened very shortly. Because indeed, there was a bit of a nightmare moment for Jeroen Ganserveld and also for Marcel de Hint, and in fact, here's the replay. So as the drivers made their way through turns 1 and 2, weaving on through, well, what exactly went wrong here? And the answer is, well, that was what was Ganserveld and De Hint just having a small coming together there, a very minor one at that, and will both drivers end up going on around there. And meanwhile for Simon Wareham, this was on lap number 2, and as he made his way through turn number 5 and in towards 6, what exactly went wrong for the number 71 driver? And the answer is going to be, turns in and hits the inside wall, and Wareham in the end find out very quickly those walls do not flinch, unlike the suspension of the car. And meanwhile for Pedro Maramon Cladera, this happened, I believe, at the end of the run down towards turn number 7. And as he made his way into the braking zone here, what exactly happened to Pedro? And the answer is going to be, goes onto the brakes, goes to turn in and goes straight on and gets it stopped just millimetres of the tyre wall there. And well done to him for doing so and able to get the car going once again. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're back to your live racing pictures. And as we do, well, more fights to come as Titus de Jong and Frankie D start to exchange glances at one another, albeit there's definitely going to be more between these two as D tucks it behind right now. I think the idea here is that he just simply holds his position and well, it doesn't cost the two of them any time as they look to catch up to the guys in front of them. But of course, it's going to be very much back and forth between these drivers all the way between now and what will be the next few minutes before they really start to think about what is going to be their final positions in this race and who they're going to be scrapping with and where they want to be in that running order. But that's always where all those question marks will be. Just for the simple reason right now, like any other race we've seen this season, our drivers keep us guessing normally all the way through it to the very finish line. But onwards they go, and as they do, we take a look back up towards the front of the field, and we look to Miles and Hendrickson. As we also do say hello there in the YouTube chat to Tia B, who says all them try-harders in one place, and indeed all our drivers absolutely tried hard, and indeed I don't think you would say that anyone here is not a bit of a try-hard, but we mean that in a very positive way there, in the fact the connotations, everyone giving it their maximum because they all love this car and want to show their absolute love for it out on the tarmac. But as Adam Miles holds Hendrickson at bay, well, Atuga there getting a little bit further back now, and I wonder if Daniel Atuga's perhaps just starting to run out of a little bit of pace. Now, I think if he is, well, that's not a sign he wants to reveal early. Alternatively, perhaps here it really is just him holding back that little bit longer. Now, at the Open, they do have the 24th place car of Marcel de Hint, who has recovered after what happened on the Open lap, but he will be falling to a lap down to these guys soon, potentially. That could be a bit of an interesting speed bump in the road for the lead lap drivers, just because of the fact that they will have to fight each other and also negotiate the man in front of them. We'll see what's going to happen there. But further back, well, here we go. In terms of a few more two wides here, this is going to be Red Corpulacia looking up the inside of Garros Jr. and behind, Tita Young performs the Moses manoeuvre there, parts the seas and makes sure that George Mattock and Frankie D cannot come back at him. But Mattock does cut the inside of Frankie D, and Peter Suapanki now is on the back of this as Mattock goes a bit sideways there coming out turn number 4. Car sliding loose a little bit as we look back from the rear of the number 17 car. And right now for Mattock, he's just trying to hold it together as best as he can. Albeit the British driver here, understandably, I think right now he might be sweating a little bit and thinking to himself, oh good lord, the pressure is building bit by bit. But here they come then down towards what will be turn number 7 once again. And as they do, Mattock, he's enjoyed himself out there, no doubt about it. But understandably here, he doesn't need this pressure. He would be starting second in our second race of the day if things were to finish as they currently stand. Whereas Frankie D would start on pole. But I think Mattock wants a bit more security here. He doesn't want Suapanki or Wayne to potentially steal it away from him should he fall back behind D. And that's why he needs to move a bit further forward if he can. But as he comes in towards the turn 11 hairpin, you see how bumpy it is on the camera. All those road surface transitions bouncing all around, left, right and centre. Indeed, right now, when you leave the Detroit Grand Prix circuit, or you used to leave it in the past, I can tell you one thing, as a driver, you would be absolutely shaken. The car would be rattled around there. And also, it was a great test as well of the reliability of the machine in the fact, because there's so many bumps in the road, much like Sebring in Florida, the idea is in the fact you build a car that is able to withstand all those bumps time and time again. And well, nothing of the sort to say the 12 hours of Sebring. However, there were 2 to 4 hour endurance races here over the course of its history, and I can tell you one thing, some cars having to retire due to damage to, say, suspension rods and components like that, it wasn't uncommon. But meanwhile, what's not uncommon as well is 2 wide action here for return number 4. And Steff Hermann there looks to try and make sure that Bryan Kelly can't go through. Now Kelly's got to deal with Byfeldt, who's looking around the outside there. And well, 2 wide through 5. In towards 6 they go. Still fighting 2 wide. As off camera, there's been some drama. Hold up, who's that? That's on camera now. That's Tim Hendrickson. Hendrickson's had a moment with the wall there at turn number 6 by looks of things. And his car is damaged. I wouldn't be surprised that's going to tow to the pit shortly. But Hendrickson's going to fall all the way to the back of the order. He's going to try and probably get it turned around. No, in fact, he has had to tow in the end. There's no way round for him down that escape road. But meanwhile, what it does mean now is that Adam Miles holds the lead ahead of Daniel Atuga, and suddenly Steff Hermann isn't fighting for 4th, he is fighting for 3rd. And well, Hermann right now ahead of Bryan Kelly, Byfeldt and Randall and Wade. Understandably, all these drivers right now continue to push each other as much as possible here, but the problem is going to be now who wants that podium more than the rest. Well, they try to sort it all out with 6 minutes to go. Let's take a look back at what exactly just happened to Tim Hendrickson. As they made their way in towards what was turn number 5. Hendrickson here coming on through the corner and in towards 6. Oh my good lord, and Hendrickson there just a snatch of the car, and it went straight to the barrier for Hendrickson. A nasty moment there, no doubt about it. And well, in the end it all went wrong, no question. And well, as he tried to bring it all back together, let's take a look back at that from the on-board perspective. So Hendrickson making his way into the corners through that left-hander, and as as he did so, well, then coming into the right hand and just pulled the car too far over, and that's why it went wrong for Hendrickson. The car just simply got caught over to the left and went straight into the barrier there. So a huge moment, and in fact, I'm having confirmation, I think, from Osmilia there, is the fact that unfortunately there was a little bit of a technical issue for Hendrickson, and that's what sent him over to the side, or what's being referred to as a screen freeze there, where I think he wanted to turn, but as a result of the screen freeze, he wasn't able to turn. And if that is Hendrickson Ed at the YouTube channel, or Osmia, I should say, reading the username correctly, well, thank you for coming in straight away, Tib, and we're very sorry to see it's all gone wrong. You were looking so good up the front of the field, and we hope we get to see a recovery driver yourself here to race number 2. It's going to be a tough one, but if anybody can do it, I reckon you can, good sir. But as we do see Adam Miles now make his way on through these corners, we seem to have lost our track map. Bear with us, it's going to come back very shortly. And there it is, it just decided to go a little bit shy. Well, Adam Miles right now with Daniel Tuga right behind. And Atuga staying so close to the back of him at the moment, but it's really between these two now for the win of this race. As meanwhile, Steff Hermann in third place. There you can see with the rear of the picture, well, he's trying to abscond here with the podium spot. And Bryan Kelly seems to be the one who's under more pressure as he tries to keep what is Byfeldt and Randall behind him. And you've got to feel for Bryan Kelly because he's had to do all the hard work in this race in some respects. He started fourth, he's going to finish fourth at this rate. But he's been under so much pressure to hold on to this fourth place over the entire race distance. Well, you'd forgive him for the fact he'd probably come away from this one feeling absolutely exhausted. But as he comes in towards turn number 1, well, right now, Byfeldt, Randall and Wade, they're all still queuing up as they all dance their way through the corners. Absolutely brilliant driving from all these drivers, and it's absolutely wonderful to see them shaking the cars from side to side. But here comes Byfeldt looking around the outside versus Kelly. Kelly does not have the toe of Hermann in front of him. And that's going to cost him 1 to 2 miles an hour here before the braking zone. But on that inside line, he can force the issue, and he's going to do exactly that. Bryan Kelly right now does not want to let him on through, but here we go 3 wide as Geoff Randall looks to the inside. It's going to be a pinch. There's contact between the two. It sends Kelly sideways, and well, in the end, Geoff Randall, he's able to survive it, unlike Bryan Kelly, who in the end did go around, but the car's still going for Bryan Kelly. Oh, but I think that'll be a shock to the system and a rear wing that's damaged, and well, understandably, I think Randall thought with Kelly having to focus so much of the car on his left, he would be able to sneak up the inside there, but I think tapering towards the apex there, Kelly, when he looked to his right hand side and saw Randall was there, he was hoping that Randall would back out instead. So I think a difference of 2 drivers there, and what we like to say in the business as 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, in terms of the fact that both drivers they'll have their interpretations and they're both equally weighted. It may end up being a racing incident in terms of how the stewards look at it after today. But meanwhile, after what was that, well, this is going to definitely open up the field a little bit more inside the top 10, whereas at the very bottom end of it, Remco Pleiss and Kevin Budgen, well, they're 9th and 10th ahead of Gerhard Jr., Nortas de Jong and Matuk. And all these drivers still so close together. But what's happening in the fight for 15th? Well, given the fact that we have lost Hendrickson to the pit lane, it does mean that we have now instead seen is multiple places being gained by some drivers further back. So suddenly the fight for 15th is between Chris Wayne and Peter Suapanki, the 2 teammates at Old Git Racing team. They'll both want this. Unfortunately, they don't have a driver in front of them who they could try to work together to beat in order to get them both to the front row of the round number 12 grid. So this is really going to come down to who wants it just a little bit more at this point. And understandably, well, Wayne holds it at the moment. And I think if you think to yourself, okay, this is mine to take. Albeit I would be surprised if Suapanki, before this race is all over, it's going to be thinking to himself, you know what, I might be able to steal it back off of him. But back to the front we go, and Daniel Tuga has found his way ahead of Adam Miles of camera on recent laps. And here's a quick replay to show you how that was happening. And this was the 2 drivers making their way in towards what was turn number 1, well, in fact turn number 3 here, but the first major braking zone as they made the way down onto the anchors. Well, Daniel Tuga there up the inside, using his ankle very well, I should say. Right body appendage there for putting the anchors on, and we're taking the place. But back to your live race we come, and as we do, well, we can see the 2 of them still together here as they make the way now in towards turn number 7 on the penultimate lap of this race, as they come through turn number 7 in towards 8, and the 2 miles so close together at the moment. Meanwhile, further back, Nathan Wade here chasing after Geoff Randall for 5th place. Randall has done well to hold on to it for now. What was once 7th has become 6th, then 5th, and now Randall trying to hold on for just a little bit longer in the car that's probably got a bit of damage to what will be the front left suspension and tyre frame. However, he seems to be composed at least for now, as they make their way up towards turn number 12. Whilst all this is happening and the white flag gets ready to wave, We've also got a good little battle going on for 17th place here. It doesn't have a spot inside the reverse grid for the purposes of the next race of the day. However, Neil Bamber, David Elliott and Tom Payne are still enjoying themselves out there, and all three drives very closely together here. And every look, there's a good old scrap going on, and that's what the skippies are all about. So they make the way on through, but as they do, well, we look back to your leaders. Fastest lap of the race has just been set by Adam Miles, a 42.099, and Daniel Tuga leads then on to lap number 12, the last of them for this sprint, and we'll round number 11. Will it go to Atuga? Will it go to Miles? Well, they're both going to go close to the inside wall. Miles puts himself there. Atuga on the outside. Now, will he go for the switchback? Yes, he does. But Adam Miles immediately holds him firm. On board we go here with Daniel Atuga as he looks now to try and find that place back. But how is he going to get it? That's going to be the challenge. Will he go for it into turns 5 or 6? Probably not turn number 5, but he takes a nice tight entry line there by comparison with Miles. I think trying to offset the dirty air that's placed over the front end of the car. And through that right-hander at turn number 6, but the car's bouncing around there, and Atuga in the end, well, he had all the speed, but unfortunately just went a little bit wide to the apex. The car washed out there with the aero wash, and as a result, it's meant he's fallen back just that little bit. But here he comes, ladies and gents. We're getting closer and closer and closer. Looking to the inside for turn number 7. It's a big lunge up the inside here for Daniel Atuga. Miles holds the outside, and in the end, Miles does well there to make sure that Atuga isn't able to intimidate him out the way. And Atuga looking so close, time and time again, literally nose to tail as they make the way in towards turns 9, 10, 11. But as they get ready for the hairpin of 11, well, there's going to be no move here. It might just be a drag race to the line between these two now as Adam Miles continues to hold on. He needs a good run out of turns 12 and 13. If he wants to add this as another win to his championship charge. But coming through 12 here, it's close. And you can see Atuga absolutely mimicking the man in front as they roar the way out of turn number 13. It's 2 tenths. It's a drag race to line, but which one of these two is going to win it? And as they come to the finish line, it is going to be Adam Miles who just holds on for victory in round number 11 of the championship ahead of Daniel Atuga. 4 seconds back, Steff Hermann makes it another podium ahead of Marcus Byfeldt takes 4th. Geoff Randall holds off Nathan Wade for 5th. Then it'll be Bryan Kelly who comes home in a rather challenging 7th ahead of Gordon van den Bergen, who in turn finishes ahead of Remco Pleiser and Kevin Budgeon, who complete that top 10. It will then be Titus Ewing in 11th place ahead of Christopher Garris Jr. and George Mattock, with Frankie D 14th, and Chris Wayne will in the end stay one step ahead of his teammate Peter Suapanki to come on home in 15th and take what will be the reverse pole position for the purposes of the feature race, even if he's broken something on the car whilst he's been trying to finish this race. We're not quite sure what he's broken. Meanwhile, 17th was Tom Payne ahead of David Elliott, and then Neil Bamber will take 19th place after a bit of a late instant for him, and he'll be ahead of Simon Wareham. We're still to finish this race. He comes past the pit lane and in towards what will be the finish line. And Simon Wemmer will take 20th place ahead of Noel Richie Robinson, who rounds off your finishers on the lead lap with a lap down finish for Marcel de Hint in 22nd place. We also did have a couple of retirees, and we'll recap those and plenty more when we do make our way into the next warm-up session in preparation for what will be our round number 12 race. So, as the circuit falls silent for a brief moment, let's take a look back at those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. And as we can see, after an absolutely brilliant 20 minutes of racing for round number 11 of the Skip Barber Community Trophy Season 5, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform iRacing and proudly sponsored by Musical Money and Old Kit Racing Team, Adam Miles taking victory there, the privateer, by what was no more than 700ths over Daniel Atuga. But it was a 2-horse race in the end after what was the difficulties for none other and then our driver from the Netherlands of Tim Hendrickson, who made haste to the wall at turn number 6. Unfortunately, due to an issue, well, we did see Miles and Atuga have to square off. And in the end, Adam Miles takes another win. And perhaps it's a sign of the fact he's trying to take control of that second place run in the championship. Steff Hermann, meanwhile, he was the best of the rest in 3rd place. And really led home the next pack of cars. Round off the podium there, the German driver ahead of the Swede Marcus Byfeldt. Well, then the Britons of Geoff Randall and Nathan Wade enjoying a good old scrap for 3rd, as much as they enjoyed a scrap between each other for 5th place. Finally, I'll get racing team and the privateer drivers. It was Bryan Kelly in 7th, who fell back a little bit as the race went on, but that was due to the incident between himself and Geoff Randall at turn number 4. But he was able to survive it and bring home some solid points, and he'll be looking to go even further up the field in our second race of the day. He was ahead of Gordon van den Bergen, the Sickhead racing driver, who finished 8th, enjoying his own battle with Bryan Kelly in the early stages, along with other drivers, and in particular we got to see him enjoy a bit of a battle with Kevin Budgeon. Albeit between himself and Budgeon was none other than Remco Pleiser, with the Raging Turtle racing driver making good progress over the race distance and offsetting what was a challenging qualifying session. Budgeon round off your top 10 then. The privateer, he'll be pleased with that result ahead of Titus de Jong, who was best of the rest in 11th for Raging Turtle Racing. And then Christopher Garros Jr. was 12th, the privateer ahead of George Mattock, with Frankie D and Chris Wayne rounding off that top 15. And therefore it does mean your front row for race number 2 is going to be comprised of none other than Chris Wayne and Frankie D. Peter Suapanki, unfortunate not to be able to finish inside the top 15. That's a 16th place finish for him, and it means the old Git Racing team driver will have to do all the hard work from towards the back of the field, as will Tom Payne, David Elliott, Neil Bamber and Simon Wareham. And unfortunately, there was a bit of an instant between Tom Payne, David Elliott and Neil Bamber in their freeway fight for 17th place right at the end. We didn't quite catch that. Unfortunately, we can't get a replay of it. We do believe that's why Neil Bamber finished at the back of the trio. Simon Wareham was a further none other than 17 seconds behind in 20th place. And then we did see outside the top 20, 21st, it was Noah Richie Robinson. He was your last lead lap finisher. Well, lap down to Marcel de Hint, but good to see him finish the race after his open lap incident. And sadly, we did lose along the way Pedro Maramon Caldera, Tim Hendrickson from the lead of the race, and of course, his fellow countryman from the Netherlands of Jeroen Ganzeveld, who unfortunately came to an early demise in the race after only what was 4 laps complete. But what a race it was, ladies and gentlemen, and well, we still got 2 minutes of our warm-up stroke cool-down session here, where our drivers, some of them, will be out of the cars. They'll be in the pit lane giving themselves a bit of a rest break, alternatively going to get a drink. Meanwhile, others are out of the circuit right now looking to just keep the blood flowing. But regardless of how they go about doing it, of course, we would recommend for you guys and girls tuning in that if you haven't already, definitely make sure and that you do go and grab yourself some liquid refreshment. Alternatively, that you do take that quick comfort break of your own for the simple reason, when we do go racing once again, you won't to miss all the madness that is due to unfold. And it's certainly going to be great positive madness in the fact we're going to see plenty of battling action once again for 30 minutes here in round number 12 of the championship. And well, of course, that will earmark after that race the end of the first half of the season. Well, it's definitely going to be an exciting end to the first half of the season, and we look forward to seeing exactly who is going to be leaving Detroit and making their way further into the States in what will be a very positive mood versus those who might have to find a few more points as the season continues to wear on. Right, ladies and gentlemen, with a minute left, I'm definitely going to take a quick sip of water, don't mind me, but we'll just leave you with the wonderful onboard of Frankie D. And well, I've definitely adhered to the notes of making sure to drink plenty of water here. And well, ladies and gentlemen, as D makes his way around, enjoyed a good race number 1, made some steady progress into that top 15. And to think now he's going to be on the front row of the grid for race number 2, and we look forward to seeing how he manages that. It's always a little intimidating when you are towards the very front of the field in what's the second race of the day, because of course, if you're a driver who doesn't normally feature at the front of the field or does not have that regular appearance up there and doesn't quite have the pace to do so, well, you've always got to try and negotiate your rivals as best as you can. For speed and negotiation, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that's not negotiable, it's time to head to the grid for our final race of the day. And so as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our second and final race. Round number 12 of the Skip Barber Community Trophy Season 5 sees none other than Chris Wayne line up on pole position for Old Git Racing Team ahead of Frankie D. Behind them on row number 2 is George Mattock and Christopher Garris Jr. On row 3 we have Titus de Jong for Raging Turtle Racing and Kevin Budgeon. And on row number 4 it's going to be Remco Palacia for Raging Turtle Racing and Stickhead Racing's Gordon von den Bergen. On what will be row number 5 it is going to be Bryan Kelly, the privateer, ahead of Nathan Wade, and that will complete your top 10. Outside the top 10, starting length, is Geoff Randall ahead of Marcus Byfeldt, with Steff Hermann line up 13th ahead of Daniel Atuga, and then Adam Miles and Peter Suapanki on row number 8. Row 9, it's Tom Payne and none other than what is David Elliott ahead of Neil Bamber and Simon Wareham. And your field is completed there by 5 more drivers, but we can't cover them, ladies and gentlemen, because the lights are going on already. It's time for race number 2 here in Detroit, and after 5 red lights, It's lights out and away we go for the second and final time today here. Round 12 gets underway and Chris Wayne there gets a good start as Frankie D does not cover off to the outside immediately. Instead he goes on the offensive and as they glide the way into opening couple of quarters, George Mattock gets a brilliant run through turn number 1. He's going to put the pressure on straight away now as they power the way on down. D having a bit of a brush with the wall there, but he'll get away with it because it's a completely flush one. And now down towards the braking zone for turn number 3 they go. But this is going to be an absolutely mad scramble this time as they get ready to go onto the brakes. Well, top 2 may be ahead, but here comes Garris Jr. in the middle of the road with De Jong on the outside and me on D on the inside as it's a bit tight there at the apex. 2 by 2, and that's going to be a big lock up there for none other than what was David Elliott. Neil Bamber collected with that, and I believe a small tap there to the car of what was Tom Payne, sent him around, and Noel Ritchie Robinson as well. Also seeing a little bit of damage. We'll get a replay of what happened at turn number 3 shortly, but a few drivers on cold tyres, dirty air, and what was cold brakes as well, being caught out there with the major overspeed. But now it's all started to settle down, at least for a brief moment, as we've got a 2 by 2 here between Geoff Randall and Nathan Wade. Well, they're exactly picking up from where they left off at the end of race number 1 here today. And behind you see Marcus Byfeldt and Steff Hermann. They're both queuing up and saying, excuse me, gents, can you politely get a move on? Well, if you're Daniel Atuga here, his way of doing this is to go up the inside of both of them. He goes all in, does Atuga. What a move. Oh, goodness me. And Nathan Wade goes straight into the scene of multiple cars parked there on the left-hand side of the road. Brakes go hard on for a few cars. And in the end, I'm not quite sure how that's all started, but I can tell you one thing. We've lost several drivers in that instant, including Titus de Jong, also Remco Pleisier, also Pedro Maron Caldera and Jeroen Genzeveld. They've all been caught up in it. It's been a nightmare moment, and well, suddenly lap number 1 has seen many a driver's race come completely undone. Well, looking back to Neil Bamber as he fights with Marcel de Hint. Well, some drivers have been shuffled up, some have been shuffled down. Both of these 2 drivers, they've definitely been around, but they haven't picked up too much damage. But we've got a lot of cars that are going to need repair work. As after 1 lap, well, here is George Mattock going around the inside of Chris Wayne in towards turn number 1. So Mattock takes the lead this race with Christopher Garris Jr. just behind. And then we do have Gordon van der Bergen in the 4th place, meanwhile, ahead of Bryan Kelly. Well, that's your top 5. And looking further back from Kelly, it's then Daniel Atuga who runs in 6th, just ahead of Geoff Randall and Marcus Byfeldt. And then Steff Hermann will complete a run to 9th place at the moment ahead of Tim Hendrickson, and Hendrickson is already into 10th place. Michael Lord, he's covered 24th to 10th. Hendrickson right now is absolutely flying. And, well, fingers crossed for him, he doesn't have the same incident occur that happened in race number 1. We want to see him up there chasing down the podiums, if not the wins. Of course, we're not allowed to play favourites here in the commentary booth, but when we do see one of our big stars have a difficult first race today, all we can hope is the second one's a lot stronger for them. But Hendrickson right now chasing after Hermann and Miles Serpanki on Wem all queue up behind. And there's a 2-second gap there to Jeroen and Genzeveld, as these drivers right now will round off that run to 15th place. That is Neil Bamber. But as our field gradually calms down, the battles immediately now start to look a bit more strategic here compared to race number 1. We get an opportunity here to take a bit of a tactical approach and take a look back in time at what exactly happened at the start of the race. So this was none other than what was Neil Bamber making his way down towards the braking zone for turn number 3. Several drivers got it wrong, but Bamber and David Elliott to the big focus. The 173 driver locking up, and that was contact with Tom Payne there. Well, in the end, a bit of an overspeed, and I think missed his braking point, and, well, Neil Bamber being collected as the 3rd member of that, and Noel Ritchie Robinson getting a small tap there towards the rear of the car. And, well, what happened to him afterwards is the question, and the answer is going to be, well, he looked fine initially as he made his way in towards turn number 5, and the car looked absolutely fine. Can we look a little bit later on, perhaps? And, well, for Noel Ritchie Robinson, what exactly happened to him then? Because he was looking A-OK, and this was his car making his way into the braking zone. Did he just have to snap the brakes on here? Indeed, he just went deep, and that explains why we then did see Neil Bamber reverse and tap him slightly. It was because of the fact he'd gone deep into the corner. So that explains that. Then we had this, of the second half of the lap. This was the run in towards turn number 7, and, well, it was 3-4 wide there. We were focused on the 4 wide further back, and, well, Remco Pleisier made his way to the corner, and car into the barrier. That was Titus de Jong into the barrier initially. And then all the cars that came out of the corner on the natural racing line, they all got pinned out there, and then everybody else had to react behind. This was the onboard from Titus de Jong's perspective. He was battered, of course, with none other than Garris Jr. at the time, and as they made their way to the braking zone here, went deep and went too deep and hit the wall, and at this point, broken car. There is nowhere to go at this point. He can't get out the car at the moment, and as soon as he could, he towed to the pit lane. 9, it was only going to end up in tears. We had this for Nathan Wade a bit further back. as of course he was in the battle that we were more transfixed on. He was the man on the outside there, Randall in the middle, and then it was Atuga on the inside. Atuga went for the 2-for-1, and then suddenly, well, Atuga had to collect Randall almost there, and Wade had nowhere to go other than straight into the instant, and you could see there Pedro Maramon Cladera being turned around out of panic, I think, for everyone else behind, as they all tried to make sure they didn't get collected in what was the growing traffic jam in downtown Detroit. But as he made his way through the corner, you'll see here, he runs out wide, sees what's happening, has put the brakes on, and unfortunately for him, the car behind hasn't seen what's happened, and well, you can't exactly blame the man who made the tap on the back of his car, and that being none other than Drone and Ganterveld, and the simple reason that he wouldn't have known, and the yellow flags would never have been waving at that point in time. They would not have come out in time by looks of things. But as we come back to your live racing, well, whilst we may have had several drivers end up in the instant, the good news is most of them are back out there after what has been definitely a bit of a chaotic opening 3 to 4 minutes. But George Mattock right now, he's definitely up there leading this race ahead of Chris Wayne and Christopher Garris Jr. But you've got to keep in mind the fact the man who's in third right now is closing on the top two at a rapid rate of knots. And with everything that's happened, what this has led to is a bit of intrigue here, because whereas in our previous races perhaps, we have normally seen that the faster drivers have quickly come through the field, as we see Marcus Byfeldt out the inside of Geoff Randall, who plays the game of compliance. Well, in this one, given the way that instant has actually created a bit of a buffer from the top three to the rest of the field, it does mean now that our drivers are going to find themselves in a little bit of an odd space, which is they need to either choose to work together or someone's going to perform a very early undercut and hope they can just simply outrun everyone. But then how do they close down the time to those drivers at the very front of the field who've already been gifted a bit of a gap? That's the difference now, and I think it means that a lot of our drivers here in the mid-pack, they're going to have to switch to mode, which is essentially we all need to slipstream off each other as long as we can, not just to save fuel but also to gain lap time, because the slipstream around here can be worth the best part of 4 to 5 temps if it's absolutely now spot on. But it's for these more technical combinations of corners, such as turns 7 through to 11, where being so close to the car in front definitely proves to be very challenging, and it's where you can lose just as much time as you can make up on the straights. Third back, Nathan Wade, looking to fight his way around Tom Payne, does so from 5 into 6. Nice move there from Nathan Wade, albeit Payne being quite compliant to be fair, and therefore letting Wade move on. And I think Payne at this point just keeping the car together and hoping they'll be able to follow Wade around the circuit and catch up to Simon Wareham's only 1.2 seconds up the road from the pair. So we come back to Van den Bergen, he's got Byfeldt all over the back of him like a bad rash. And well, Byfeldt very quickly pulls to the outside there and sends out the signal, which is, no, take your race to line, don't fight me. We don't need to be fighting right now, as Bryan Kelly dives his way through turn number 2, or I should say dances his way really through. The fact the car's more sideways than straight, but down the stretch of road he goes and in towards turn number 3. He does so. We can see in front there, Byfeldt going up the inside of Van den Bergen. They swap the places around, and well, Van den Bergen just lets it go and tucks back in. And meanwhile, Geoff Randall just watches on, and so does Kelly. We're the 4th man in this pack. And now, as they get ready for the very tight sequence of turns 4, 5, and 6, all these 4 drivers here, I think now all starting to sing off the same hymn sheet. They'll be hoping they can catch up to Daniel Atuga and bring him into the group and use him to move even quicker. We will see there. As you can see, the more pronounced the dirty air becomes, the further down the pack, with the fact our group leader of Byfeldt was able to stay nice and tight to the inside wall of turn number 6. Van den Bergen was a little bit wide, and then Geoff Randall was much more wide, about half a car's width wide, and Kelly followed him in that fashion. That's how quickly the dirty air accumulates from car to car. Even if these machines don't have anywhere near as much aero as, say, what would be an IndyCar machine, or the modern Formula 1, those little rear wings and also small front wings, they definitely do make a difference. When you lose them or damage them, you very quickly lose a huge amount of aero, which is critical to this car for carrying a lot of the lap time. They're so close as Bryan Kelly, but right now no sign of change here between them, as we can see in the rear of the picture being brought into the fold. Tim Hendrickson, he's trying to bring Steff Hermann and Adam Miles along. All these drivers, to be fair, they've definitely all been shaken by what happened in the opening couple of minutes, but right now they're still together as Wayne is into the pit lane. Chris Wayne decides to come in very early here, so this is an undercut from Chris Wayne. Is it the right course strategy? Well, I think Wayne feels as though it is, and the simple reason he thinks that is because of the fact that given the way the race has been going and the fact he's been tucked in behind Garris Jr., I wonder if he thinks that if he gets out of that pack, he doesn't have to worry as much about having to deal with Garris Jr. and eventually what will be Atuga and also Byfeldt and Van den Bergen. But I wouldn't have expected that from Wayne, and Serpanki does the same. So I'll get Racing Team. Well, they've decided for 2 of their drivers to come in and do the undercut, whereas for Geoff Randall, they've decided to keep him out there in the pack. So I think the idea is he can do all the fuel saving in the pack, whereas Wayne and Serpanki, they may as well get themselves some clear track and therefore be able to push on. And where does Chris Wayne come out in all of this? Was he's exited the pit lane. He has come out in 14th place. And there's Marcel de Hint you see at the bottom of the picture. He is 2.8 seconds up the road. So therefore, Wayne has actually bought himself a nice little bit of space on the circuit with Frankie D 9 seconds behind almost. He won't be worried about cars catching him anytime soon, but now he's going to have to push hard here. He's going to have to deliver some very solid qualifying effective laps if he wants to be able to move back forward and retake those places, and hope, in the meantime, the lead cars start to fight each other. But George Mattock here, still in control. 10 minutes complete, another 20 to go. And the number 17 driver here right now dancing his way on around the latter half of lap as we get this lovely camera angle to show you how close they get to that exit. We'll practically taking the camera out there as he makes his way around, and Gareth Jr. and Daniel Atuga the same. Well, these drivers push it hard, and everyone wants to catch up to leader right now. They want to be with Mattock because they get within 1 second of him. They can then start to siphon the slipstream off of him and therefore save some absolutely critical fuel that could enable them to leapfrog him on strategy. Because, of course, that's what Mattock's got to decide here. Does he push all in and therefore not save any fuel and leave himself at risk of being called to the strategy, or does he fuel save but he knows he'll fall potentially backwards to the cars behind? Well, what we are seeing, in fact, is out of turn number 14, there was a brush with the wall for Gareth Jr., and that gap to Mattock has opened up a little bit. It's brought Daniel Atuga dangerously close here for Gareth Jr., and I mean dangerously in the fact that right now they will have to start to work together at this point onwards, as Atuga immediately looks up the inside here, and he has not wasted any time as Atuga. He is absolutely eager to get to the head of this group. Atuga thinks he can win this race, and well, I definitely believe when he says that, ladies and gents, because of the fact he is pushing on so hard at the moment. He has got leading pace here in the number 91 today, and well, he quickly sweeps his way past Gareth Jr., who is quite compliant to be fair, but now Atuga's got to be able to prove the point, which is that 2 second gap to George Mattock is nothing. He can strip that gap down as quickly as he's just made his way past number 36. Coming up towards what will be turn number 7 now, you can see Marcus Byfeldt 1.6 seconds back, and he's trying to bring everyone else up behind him here to catch up to what will be none other than Atuga and Gareth Jr. in their little pair. But he doesn't perhaps necessarily want to bring all this group. Nobody in this run of 4th all the way through to 10th place. But Adam Miles at the back of it is coming in. Now, Adam Miles is the interesting one here, because remember, when we've interviewed him in the past, he has mentioned that as part of his practice for each and every feature race round, he always works out where the undercut pit stop is early on. Now, we have seen him in previous rounds going quite early, typically within, say, the first 4 to 5 laps, such as what we saw at Circuit Zandvoort. He was one of the earliest stoppers by comparison with his rivals, but right now he's not doing any such thing, as we do show you the pit stops that have been registered for drivers on screen, so that gives you an idea of who's pitted and who has not. Remember, we're only expecting one mandatory pit stop here today, but you will have some drivers towards the back of the field who've already done one because of the repair work from what was the open lap incident at turn number 7. But right now, Adam Miles is staying out a bit longer here, so I wonder if he's switched to a plan B, and that plan B may be full-on fuel saving as much as possible. And we do know that Miles is incredibly competent at fuel saving, with or without the tow of another car. He finds ways to save fuel that others would only dream of. So therefore, Adam Miles right now, if he's going to be staying in this pack, I think he's going to be doing all the fuel saving that anybody can, and will we see him jump to the head of this pack after the pit stop has occurred. And we get close to the halfway point of the race. We're not too far away from starting to see the pit stops being almost forced on drivers, which we'd expect those pit stops to arrive by around what will be 21 minutes into the race at this point, so it's not long left. Marcel de Hint, meanwhile, into the pits, and he's going to release Simon Wareham and David Elliott on past him, and de Hint does take his one and only stop. Wareham has still to take his stop, to be fair, and so does David Elliott. So these two drivers, they'll be ahead for now, but they will need to go back that little bit later. But coming back to Miles and Hermann, these two have gone back a little bit, and in fact, I think Steff Hermann's had a bit of a moment. Coming out to turn number 6, he's had a brush with the wall, and Miles has had to back off a bit, and that's caused them to now fall to 1.2 seconds back off of Hendrickson. And at this point, if you're Adam Miles, you've got to be thinking, okay, if the guy in front of me is now going slightly losing the guys in front, is it actually better for me to potentially come into the pits? Well, only he's going to be the one who knows what to do there. But that's always a risk when you run in the pack. If somebody in front gets it wrong and splits the pack, suddenly you're at the mercy of the car directly in front of you, or at least the secondary pack, rather than that lead group. More into the pits, two drivers dive, and it's Bryan Kelly and Tim Hendrickson. They both make the way on in, so they've decided enough's enough. They're going to split the race almost in half here, and as Kelly and Hendrickson make the way on down, well, is it the right call? I think it might be for Bryan Kelly here. I think this will work out very well to the way he normally runs these races. Of course, many of you will remember his huge strategic gamble at what was Alton Park, where he pulled off the absolutely miraculous win in the feature race. And with Kelly in doing so here, he has left his pit stop already, and was a very short pit stop for Bryan Kelly. Stationary time 9.5 11.4 seconds to Hendrickson's 12.7 seconds. So therefore Kelly has saved a lot of fuel, and he's decided enough's enough. He has brought himself out in clear track. As far as I'm aware, I'll look out my commentary booth window, and in fact, can we get visual confirmation of that? We can. Bryan Kelly, there he is. He's come out in 10th place, ahead of Chris Wayne, who in turn has got Tim Hendrickson right behind him. So Hendrickson, meanwhile, has not brought himself the clear track, as meanwhile Jeroen Gansveld has made his way into the pits from what was 15th place. But all drives carrying on. Right now, we will see where more pit stops to come, as George Mattock has been caught up to over the last 3 laps by Daniel Atuga. We were wondering how quick Atuga would be able to catch up to him, as Mattock right now goes a bit sideways there towards turn number 8. A bit of pressure perhaps building here for your leader. Well, for Mattock, even if he can't win this race, I think if he can take a podium or a top 5 here, it would be such a huge booster to his confidence, and I think it would give him the reassurance that he is getting quicker round after round, week after week of racing. But he's still got a long pack of cars that are going to look to try and steal those places away from him. And right now, strategy is going to become the key as they come out of 13, make their way onwards. And will we see Atuga touch the pits? No, he looks to the inside instead. Atuga there close to the water, turn number 14. They go too wide in. And on the exit of turn 14 in towards 1, Daniel Atuga takes the lead this race as Geoff Randall makes his way into the pit lane underneath my commentary booth window. And, well, Randall then deciding, OK, with the field starting to flitter out, I need to come on in now and make sure I come back in amongst the pack. But Mattock here now will just ride behind what will be Atuga as we jump aboard Mattock's car. And number 17 driver here, if he can stay this close for quite some time, he'll be able to pick up some lines, but also he'll be able to save some fuel, and he'll give himself just that little bit more confidence that a podium, his first podium of the season, could be coming, or at least the top 5. As behind, Garris Jr., 1.4 seconds back, would like to catch up to this group as well if he can. But we'll have to see what he's able to do as Bamber's into the pits from what was 10th place. That's going to relegate him down the order to a degree. More pit stops to come. And in terms of quick pit stops, I want to tell you one thing, Geoff Randall, 9.78 seconds to Bryan Kelly's 9.37. So right now, out of your top 10 competitors today, we do have our fastest pit stop sitting with Bryan Kelly. He seems to be the driver who has been able to save the most fuel. Understandably, the longer you stay in this pack, the more fuel you may be able to potentially save up to a point. But it's the offset of saving the fuel versus how much time you lose by running in the pack, if at all. But Chris Wayne here, we look back to, he's chased after Tim Hendrickson. And these two have already pitted. They've taken the one and only pit stop, with Wayne taking his pit stop on lap number 6, Hendrickson on lap number 8. But Hendrickson continues to make ground. He's still in 10th place, which is where he was when we last left him before he pitted. But Hendrickson will be hoping that he can catch up to Geoff Randall, who's only 3 seconds up the road right now. So Hendrickson definitely putting on a storm of pace here versus Randall. Albeit we have to respect the fact Randall's only just come out the pit lane. He's got to get himself back up to pace. But Hendrickson is going to be one to watch here towards the end of the race, because over 12 minutes of racing left, plus the final lap. But if you presume that at the rate of knots he's travelling at, he closes 4 to 5 tenths a second on Randall, he could be fighting for the top 5 come the end of this race at the final lap. So Hendrickson may yet be able to take a top 5 today. It won't be the results he expected, given what went wrong in the sprint race, but it'll definitely be a great way to recover today and make sure that he does leave here as his head held high. As these drivers head out towards another lap, you know, it comes to those who've already gone on to the next one. It's still Atuga and Mattock is falling back a little bit. Atuga is gapping gradually. Gap is now up to 7 tenths, with Garris Jr. 1.5 seconds back, meanwhile still watching on and thinking what is next for him. I think at the moment, a lot of these drivers now, they have committed to essentially trying to go for the overcut strategy, or essentially go as long as you can on the fuel tank, and nobody really wants to come in at this point. I think the worry is, are they going to come out to clear track, or are they going to come out in amongst what is the groups that have already pitted, or the drivers who have already pitted? And nobody wants to risk it. They want to essentially come in only when everyone else in front of them has done so, or with them. So that way they have that mental reassurance they've been able to take the fuel tank the right distance. There's nothing wrong with that, to be fair. We do see a lot of drivers in these races tying themselves to the strategy of the car in front, so that way they've always got somebody to work with. That's the presumption. Then has the car in front of you saved as much fuel for you? Have they saved less, or have they saved more? Always one of the big question marks there, of course, because that can lead to you coming out on a lonely circuit. But what we can see is that Adam Miles staying out long. This is the first time this season we've seen him stay out long in the feature race. Well, he's still keeping Hermann at bay, half a second. Miles wants to close up to Vandenberg a little bit more if he can. Gap is 1.4 seconds in the exit of turn number 13. I think Miles would like that to be sub-second, so that way he can then start to just salvage a little bit of the slipstream. But on to lap number 12, 11 minutes left on the clock now. Those pit stops will loom closer and closer. And those who have yet to pit, in terms of those who are contesting the top 10 spots, they are your drivers from 7th place upwards. Otherwise, everyone else inside that top 10 has pitted. The other drivers further down who have yet to pit, David Elliott. Here you can see him in the 173. The Irishman who had to pit on lap number 1 due to damage picked up as a result of the turn 3 incident. Well, he has got to pit again, as we're to understand it, in order to make sure he can get to the end unscathed on fuel capacity. And it is the same for none other than Titus de Jong and Kevin Budgen, as these drivers right now also make the one around. So you'll expect them to make 2 stops today rather than just the normal 1. That's the way it's gone, but to be fair, they're not necessarily going to become undone just yet because of the fact anything could happen before that finish line, and it normally does. But back to Hendrickson we come. He's got Chris Wayne right behind him, and Hendrickson right now, as Ryland Borden look back from the rear of the number 28 machine. He'll be seeing that Wayne is not being shaken off at the moment. Wayne doing a very good job to stay with Hendrickson. And for Chris Wayne, well, the one-lap shootout in qualifying definitely was not his forte, it would seem. But in the race, he's definitely brought a lot of pace here to Detroit. But sadly, where it's just not worked out, that's been the problem. The one-lap shootout really is the do-or-die qualifying session. And in some respects, you could say the 3-lap averages as well. So you've only got 3 laps, and you need to set all 3 of them. And the idea is we take the average of our drivers' qualifying times, and that's how they line up on the grid. But understandably, the problem there is the fact you invalidate one of those laps and suddenly we have no average to calculate. You just literally go to the back of the field. So that feels like it's a longer version of the one-lap shootout in a way, or it's the 3-lap average shootout, you could say. But as we go from talking about what's a shootout and what's not, meanwhile, well, now it's going to be a straight shootout in the pits because George Mattock makes his wound down. He was in 2nd place at the time. He was behind Daniel Toogood and just ahead of Garros Jr. He takes his service, and well, where is Bryan Kelly? Where is Geoff Randall? We look to the blimp camera here as he makes below the tree line. And coming in towards turn number 14, Mattock still being serviced at the moment. It's a long pit stop for George Mattock. 13 seconds. Well, understandably, we've used a lot more fuel compared to most. But as Mattock makes his way out the pit lane, this has cost him sizable time here. And there is Bryan Kelly. There's Geoff Randall. And we can also see Maron Cladera there getting their car repaired. So it's good to see them making the way out, even if it is going to be a long way back. But this does mean that Mattock right now has been caught up to by Kelly and Randall. He has not been able to steer clear of them as a result of being up the front. Sorry, it's worked out for Kelly and Randall at least for now. And now we're down to 6 cars that have yet to pit. Oh no, and it's going rogue for Maron Cladera in the rear of the picture. He goes spinning around there, coming through turn number 3. And that's cold tyres there. He's been sat stationary in the pits for so long. They've probably put on a new set of boots. But unfortunately, that's the spin. That's not going to help out at all. As meanwhile, Marcus Byfeldt falls down the order here. He falls down drastically so. What on earth has just happened to Marcus Byfeldt? He's fallen all the way to the back from what was, I do believe at the time, 2nd place. And well, in fact, he made the move on Christopher Garros Jr. in the first place there. Let's correct ourselves, and there's lost out. But as these drivers make the way through, well, we will get a replay of that shortly because we're going to stay here to see whether any of them make the way into the pit lane first. As they come in towards turns 13 and 14. Well, Daniel Toogood's into the pit lane. We've also got their Van den Bergen scooping his way to the inside. Half of them are coming to the pits, the other 2 have not. So, Garros Jr. and Adam Miles stay out. Meanwhile, Toogood, Van den Bergen, Byfeldt and Hermann are all in. And, well, Daniel Toogood, you would presume, is going to come out the head of it all, given the fact he came in with a commanding lead of 4 seconds, whereas everyone else is going to have to be fighting for 2nd place here. But we're about to find out as Toogood takes his stop. And in the end, it was a grand total of 10.5 seconds stationary. Has anybody else been able to save more fuel than him in this pack? And the answer is Marcus Byfeldt has 8.4 seconds as the stationary time. So Marcus Byfeldt has a quicker stop. Van den Bergen's been serviced, and Steff Hermann has as well, with Van den Bergen just ahead of Hermann. Whereas Mattock, and here they all come out, and as they do, George Mattock, he comes up through and he brings Bryan Kelly and Geoff Randall with him. So therefore, Van den Bergen and Hermann have lost out in the pit stops. Meanwhile, Mattock, Kelly and Randall have gained, and Byfeldt and Toogood have gained as well. Daniel Toogood has this race in his hands to win now, subject to what Miles and Garros Jr. do in the pit lane. That's the final question mark. We can see, meanwhile, Hermann and, well, Van den Bergen, they're going to stop their fighting immediately now and probably think one thing and one thing only, which is we need to stay and catch up with the guys in front of us. But in front, the very front of the field, Adam Miles at the inside there of Garros Jr. in towards turn number 7. Well, this is a battle that's playing out here. This is going to cost the leaders time. Remember, they've still got to pit. I suspect they'll be pitting at the end of this lap. And Miles wants the lead off his rival right now. He's going to go linear at turns 7, 8, and 9, and 10. He'll be on the outside for turn number 11, however, and this is going to be a rough one. There's a small touch between the 2 of them, but they just about survive it there. Both trying to show each other just enough breathing room. And Garros Jr. holds on there, going for what was the outside to inside into 11. And Miles looks to the switch back there, but but Geoff Randall right now absolutely not giving it, but he goes deep. Geoff Randall goes deep, and Miles switches his way on through turn number 13. Do they both come into the pits? The answer is yes. So now it's a game in the pit lane. Who's going to be the quickest of the pair? And as they make the way down, well, Adam Miles has got a way to go. So has Geoff Randall before he gets to his pit box. And, well, meanwhile, we look back to Daniel Tuga. There he is. And that fighting surely is going to reward Tuga with the lead of this race. As Miles right now being serviced. And the total stationary time for Miles in the end is 10.13 seconds for Geoff Randall, who's had to make his way all the way to the end of the pit lane, almost. Well, in the end, he's going to have a stationary time that is about the same as Daniel Tuga takes the lead of this race. On course expected. Adam Miles comes out ahead there of none other than Geoff Randall. But look at this, Adam Miles in that little battle for that one brief moment comes out right alongside Bryan Kelly. So for Miles, he's right back in the thick of it, and it looks so now second place might be the best that he can achieve here today. Given Tuga is 3.5 seconds clear of all these drivers, and right now second through to 10th place are separated by only a grand total of what is none other than 7 seconds over what's been 25 minutes and a pit stop. Well, that's how close it is, ladies and gentlemen, and now it's going to be an absolutely bare knuckle battle in order to see who is going to be coming on home on the podium and who's going to round off this top 5. And we're going to bring that all as it unfolds. But as these drivers continue to wound around, well, right now, Steff Hermann there, he seems to be struggling a little bit after the pit stop, and the 7th place he's currently in, 1.1 seconds off the back of Miles. I don't think he's quite got the ability to catch back up to Miles at the moment. He'll be hoping he can. It doesn't seem to be coming forthwith for him, and that is going to be a bit of a challenge. Well, we do have that question mark of what exactly happened before the pit stops played out for the last couple of drives. More on that in a sec, as Adam Miles at the inside there of Geoff Randall in towards turn 7, but now Randall is going to hold as much as he can here, like Miles did versus Geoff Randall, through 7, through 8, through 9, and in the end, Randall cannot stay too wide there in towards the hairpin of turn number 11. He decides to back off, and I think Randall here deciding it's not worth it. As we ride on board with your 107 driver, heading in towards what will be the next right-hander at turn number 12. And right now, every little scrap is going to cost them so much time as they go so close to the exit wall there at 12 and 13. Well, these drivers absolutely on the limit. These cars now will be the lightest they have been for the majority of the day, and therefore it means they've got to give it everything at this point. They've got full manoeuvrability, and the only thing that will be holding them back at this point are the barriers and the road surfaces of Detroit. Other than that, of course, driver stamina always becomes key, and street circuits do always just take that little bit more out of you because you've got that constantly pumping adrenaline fear factor, which is those walls. Are they getting closer or not? They never move the walls. However, I can tell you one thing, it feels like they're moving when you're racing this close and trying to go for the best possible lap. So a big lock up the road there. That is Bryan Kelly getting ahead of George Matic off camera. Let's get a quick replay of that when we can. And in fact, I think we can immediately get a replay of it, and here it is. So this was making the way down towards turn number 3, and Bryan Kelly in the draft there. And Matic, he decided to stay in the draft of none other than Marcus Byfeldt directly in front of him. But then all on the brakes they both went, and Bryan Kelly in the end went in. And well, Matic went to turn in now. I think he turned in a little bit prematurely, did George Matic. I think the enthusiasm just took over a little bit, and then that's why he had to quickly snatch the car back together. Plus the road surface transition wouldn't have helped, and Bryan Kelly got it done. So it wasn't a lock-up from Kelly. It was Matic there sliding loose, but to be fair, well done to both of them for making sure it didn't end up in tears. But actually live race has become 2.5 minutes left on the clock. All these drivers right now stay together. My goodness, it's incredible. Second through to 10th, literally separated by such slender margins. I mean, well, this man is just walking away with it. He's absolutely nailed it on strategy here today as Daniel Tuga, and then everyone else right now is thinking, why can't I be that man? Well, the answer is just simply because of Tuga carved his way through the field when others could not. And right now, Marcus Byfeldt, well, 2 minutes left. They're going to have what will be 2 more tours of the circuit. We will get a grand total of 18 laps in round number 12. And what we can see is that Byfeldt right now is the unenviable task as they go close to the wall there. George Matic running Miles as close to the concrete as he dared to dream to do so. And Adam Miles in the end, we was never going to stay on that inside, worrying for the fear of tapping the wall. But Miles right now building up the momentum, and Matic, he's trying to hold on. He's trying to plug the gaps here, but he can't quite do it. He can't be everywhere at once. And as they make their way down towards turn number 3, it's 2 by 2 as they come. Bryan Kelly and Marcus Byfeldt swap places, but they do it before they get to the braking zone. Meanwhile, Adam Miles here has got Matic still at his inside. Matic refuses to budge an inch, but right now Adam Miles is going to take it the full by as they overlap there in towards turn number 4. Miles on the outside, Matic on the inside. They still give each other plenty of space and a brush with the wall there, but it's flush. It's not going to damage Miles' car too much. In towards turn number 5, you don't go too wide for him, but they're going to do it either way. And in towards turn number 6, Matic still defending. Here comes Randall. Randall looks on the inside, getting close to the wall. Miles sees him coming in, gives him the space to cooperate. And now coming down the back stretch here. Well, the race is very much true to life at this point, ladies and gentlemen. Steff Hermann now gets involved. And Hermann, the championship leader, would love to get ahead of these guys. He's going to make it 3 wide for a brief moment here as Matic tries to lead them all the way down towards turn number 7. Oh, my good Lord. And Hermann goes round the outside. Miles backs out, recognising the fact that being in the middle of the sandwich isn't where you want to be. Nobody wants to be the filling. But Hermann on the outside to inside here. And Randall made to go to the wall. And suddenly Steff Hermann gains 1. He gains 2. And now Miles comes on through as well. But can he get it done before the breaks into 11? No, he can't. Randall's back there with him as they exit the corner, and the queue is building up behind. Garros Jr., Hendrickson and Van den Bergen, they're now there with him, as we can see Randall having to defend even more. Miles refuses to go away, and right now who can blame him here as they continue, but at long last he has to back out into turn 13, otherwise they're going to lose so much momentum and be swallowed up across the start finish line. But one more lap, here we come, and it's Tim Hendrickson right now battling with Garros Jr. as Hendrickson goes the inside there in towards turn number 1, and Van den Bergen is behind, but side by side in front, Randall versus Miles. They're 2 wide of the exit here. These two right now absolutely delivering an incredible battle, and well, there's a bit of contact. There's a touch between the two, and they just about keep it together, my good Lord. And meanwhile at the front of the group, Bryan Kelly goes defensive versus Byfeldt, but he's going to be safe, but behind, that's 3 wide as Hendrickson's up the inside of both Miles and Randall. Randall locks up there, and Hendrickson, he almost takes both of them. Does he get it done? In towards turn number 4 he comes, and Miles is on the outside, but I don't think he's going to carry the red to this time. He's not, and in the end it is going to be Tim Hendrickson who takes both places there and pulls the wall over the eyes of Miles and Randall as quick as that. My good Lord, they're not going to give us a moment to breathe here. As meanwhile, Gordon Van den Bergen in 10th place. He's watching this all right now. I think he's got the perfect popcorn seat view, but he needs to get a bit more involved in it, I think he's saying to himself. Our leader leads the way by 6 seconds, and meanwhile Byfeldt and Kelly, they're still fighting over second as Bryan Kelly goes as defensive as he can. And meanwhile Byfeldt then brushes the wall. My good Lord, that's the closest you ever want to get to a wall here at Detroit. And as they come out of the corner right now, Byfeldt goes outside to inside. What can Kelly do here? Can he run it all the way to the inside of turn number 11? I don't think he can. And Byfeldt takes the place back here, stops it dead on the apex and says to Kelly, no, I know what you're trying to do. I'm not going to fall for that one. But upwards they come in towards turn number 12. Overtaking opportunities of running out now, but whilst they're all fighting still, meanwhile this man runs his way to the win, and with Daniel Atuga, it's been some time since we said this, but he is going to be your winner today in the feature race here in Detroit. He takes the round 12 win by 7 seconds in the end, but will it be Bryan Kelly or Marcus Byfeldt who's the runner-up? In the end it is Bryan Kelly just ahead of Byfeldt, with Steff Hermann taking over full place ahead of George Matic by a whisker, and then Tim Hendrickson comes across the line in the 3 wide finish with Adam Miles and Geoff Randall. Christopher Garros Jr. was 9th ahead of Gordon Van den Bergen who completes your top 10, and then it will be Chris Wayne in 11th place ahead of Peter Serpanki, his teammate, who finishes in 12th, and then it will be a further 21 seconds back before we do get to Neil Bamber as he completes his journey here today. Oh, goodness me, what a race it has been. We're going to get a replay of the finish line with regards to all those drivers coming on through, because we caught the leaders, but not what happened in the fight for what was full through to 10th. But here comes Neil Bamber coming across the line in 13th ahead of Marcel de Hint, who's about to make his expedition to the finish line. And with the number 4 driver here, he's definitely had a bit of a down day today, but he still sees the end of race number 2, and that's always great to see. It will then be 9 seconds back here to Nathan Wade, who I think has run out of fuel, unfortunately, for Wade, as he just cruises along here. Is Tom Payne going to pass him right at the finish? And the answer is going to be yes, he will. Payne will come on home in 15th place, just ahead of Nathan Wade, who I think is going to make it to the finish line. Yes, he is just about. He's not going to recreate Nigel Mansell. And then it will be Remco Pleister in 17th place, ahead of Titus de Jong, and will come through to finish 18th. And well, from the Raging Turtle Racing driver, it will then be a further 11 seconds back before we do get to Simon Wareham and Kevin Budgeon, who will complete your top 20, and with it the lead lap finishing order. Oh my goodness, ladies and gents, what a conclusion to the race. Absolute pandemonium in the final 5 minutes for second through to 10th. And we take a look back at what was that last lap, and particularly the run to the finish between none other than Bryan Kelly and Marcus Byfeldt. Firstly, we saw them, of course, they were the big focus of attention perhaps, as the field behind absolutely exploded to life here. And well, Hendrickson having to go defensive versus Miles in towards turn number 12, and Miles all over the back of him there, but Miles in the end pushed and shoved as hard as he tried. He could not find a way through. But then what about Byfeldt versus Hermann? Well, no, not Byfeldt versus Hermann. It was Hermann versus Matic there. And in the end, Steff Hermann went around the outside of Matic to take the place. And Tim Hendrickson, well, we're going to catch a bit more of that from another angle. We did see Hendrickson in the end just make the magic happen. But this was the on-board from Geoff Randall's perspective through those last few quarters here in that battle for none other than 6th place. You could see Hendrickson pulling over to what was the inside there. He was never going to let Miles look up the inside into turn number 12, but it put him so far offline that Randall at this point just needed to time his switch back appropriately, and he did so through 13, and will build up the speed here in the 107. And now, where did Hendrickson put the car? He gradually listed over to the inside there. Smart from Hendrickson, blunted Miles' momentum, and Miles in the end ran out of road before he could get ahead at the finish line, and Randall just wasn't able to get close enough to try and make it 3 wide at the finish. And that explains the story of how the race ended in that fight for 6th place. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, the circuit falls silent, and we take a look at the race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries. And what a race it was. And after 30 minutes of intense racing action in round number 12 of the Skip Barber Community Trophy Season 5, as brought to you in the Premier Sim Racing platform of iRacing, and proudly sponsored by Musical Money and the Old Git Racing team, Daniel Atuga, your winner. And it's been some time since we've been able to say that, but the Swede back on top there with a masterclass of strategy. Bryan Kelly took the runner-up spot there, battling hard right at the finish for Marcus Byfeldt, and just beating the man who has beaten him a couple of times this season in similar circumstances. But Kelly today, the American driver, on home soil, making it back onto the podium. Marcus Byfeldt there, he'll be pleased to finish 3rd, and we'll take some solid points going into our next pair of rounds, ahead of Steff Hermann, who just missed out on the podium, but the championship leader with that 4th place there, added to his result from earlier on. He'll be thinking to himself one thing and one thing only, which is the results just keep on coming. George Mattock, what a drive from him. His first top 5 of the season, I do believe. The Englishman there, taking that 5th place spot in the number 17, just ahead of Tim Hendrickson, and the Dutchman there, fending off the attacks of Adam Miles and Geoff Randall all the way from the midpoint to the finish. Christopher Garris Jr. took 9th place in the end, couldn't quite emulate what was the performances of the rest of his countrymen. However, he was able to keep Gordon van den Bergen behind by 2 tenths of the finish, with a stickhead racing driver completing a top 10 ahead of Chris Wayne, who was 11th for Old Git Racing team, ahead of his teammate Peter Suapanki. Neil Bamber took 13th place, the privateer recovering well after the opening lap difficulties for so many drivers at turns 3 and 7, and Marcel de Hint was 14th, just ahead of Tom Payne, when Nathan Wade struggled into the finish line on low fuel, but in the end did roll across the line in 16th, and then it was Remco Placier 2 seconds behind in 17th for Raging Turtle Racing, ahead of his teammate Titus de Jong. Simon Wareham took 19th place ahead of Kevin Budgeon, and they were practically a dead heat across the finish line, and then we did see just outside that top 20 David Elliott, who was 3 laps down in the end. He was one of the retirees, as so was Frankie D, although both will be classified as finishers. And then we did have your classified non-finishers of Hironen Gansenveld, and also there Pedro Maron Cladera and Noel Richie Robinson, who was one of the biggest victims of the open lap incidents. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, the circuit falls silent, and well, as it does, we're going to fall silent for a brief moment, but not for too long. We'll be back in approximately 3 to 4 minutes time for our post-round interviews of our volunteer drivers. Indeed, there have been some incredible stories with the racing today, and well, we won't miss those. Interviews are coming right up. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our post-round interviews. And we're going to kick off with a man who found himself right in the thick of things in both races, because joining me now in the interview room is none other than George Mattock. Good evening to you, George. What a pair of races today, and what a result as well in what was your feature race. No doubt about it, right in the thick of the fighting from the start, and come the end of it all, I can imagine you're absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, it was a little tiring, a little stressful. I know I really enjoyed that race. Both of them, actually. I didn't do qualifying. I did set a lap. It was a decent lap, but I just clipped the wall, got a 0x. I think it would have put me, I don't know, 9th or something, 8th or 9th. So it was an okay lap, but yeah, just hit the wall at turn 1. So that put me at the back, or right near the back for the race 1. And then, yeah, I knew that if I could get to 15th, that would be pole, but I'd rather be a little further forward. So just sent it in the first race. I think I sent it and made three places by turn 2. So, and then just ended up finishing, I think, 13th or so. And then, yeah, I knew the feature race was going to be super critical to get to the front as soon as possible and just pump in some laps as fast as you can on cold tires. But yeah, that was very enjoyable. And leading the race, honestly, it's like rolling back the years leading the race. It was nice. But I knew the guys were going to be using the draft. I knew they were going to be catching me. I was checking the lap times. We were trading laps. And I didn't want to push super hard and wipe myself out of the race. So I just kept pumping in consistent laps and may have overfueled by a little bit. I think I put an extra 1.5 litres in, and that brought me out right in front of Bryan. We had a gap to Marcus, who jumped me in the pit stops. And yeah, it was just about pumping in the laps and trying to keep up. And yeah, fifth is still a great result, but very annoying because Steff got me on the line. We were side by side, and I was like, he beat me by I don't know how many centimeters on the line, but yeah, very enjoyable race.
Oh, 100%. I could hear it in your voice. You've had a lot of fun tonight. There's no doubt about it. And just coming back to qualifying, I appreciate when you didn't get a lap in the end due to a contact with the wall. What was it like with the one-lap shootout? I mean, we've had, obviously, the 3-lap average session, which in a way is a much longer shootout by comparison. But how is it dealing with the stress of the fact you get the one warm-up lap and then that's it? You have to get the job done.
Yeah, to be honest, I quite like it, even though I didn't actually get a lap in. I quite like that pressure, that one-lap shootout. Reminds me of that old school F1 qualifying. But yeah, I know that that everyone was in the same boat, and I spent a significant amount of my practice time, probably the last half an hour really, just doing quali runs and coming into the box and then going out, warming up, doing one lap and pitting, and then just repeating that. And I knew sort of where the limit was, and I just went a little bit too quick into turn 1 and then just literally brushed the wall, and that was enough for a 0x, and that was my lap done. But yeah, I like the qualifying format. The qualifying is something I need to improve on, because see, if I'm further forward in the first race, it can give you a bit more of an indication of how the second race can go. But yeah, overall, very, very enjoyable.
Oh, 100%. I agree with you on that one. And in the end, whilst you may not have set the lap, in the sprint race, we saw you gradually make some solid progress. And in the middle stages, we saw you fighting for between what was, at the time, 14th through to 17th. Eventually, it would be for 12th through to 15th. I mean, did you have in mind the fact, all I need to do is get to 15th and then I'll be on pole for race number 2?
Yeah, that was critical. I knew that 15th was, I could see 15th even. I think I was 21st or something on the grid. And I knew that there was going to be some carnage. I knew I needed to get past a couple of guys in front of me immediately and then just wait for something to happen. I don't actually think there was that many crashes. Maybe Tim was the only one I passed who was out of the race. But yeah, it was carnage. But to be honest, it was pretty slow. But I knew I had to bide my time, and I didn't actually really want to be 15th. I still need to work out how the points work in this league, but I wanted to get as far forward as possible. And I got stuck behind Titus. Sorry if I pronounced his name wrong. I just couldn't get past. We were just in a train of slipstream. And yeah, I knew that the next race would benefit because of that result. So I didn't go super hard. Just once I got in that position, I just maintained it.
Oh, absolutely fair. Once you got there, like you say, you maintained it and you earned yourself what was a third place start for the purposes of the feature race. We saw you get a really good start, to be fair, and really go hounding over the lead and then take the lead and try to run away with it. Just take us through that thing. You mentioned earlier the fact, the excitement of the joy of being right back up the front, and it brought back memories of the past. I mean, did it feel as though you'd wound back the years in a way and the rust has come away from you a bit?
Yeah, I didn't feel any rust at all. It was amazing. I was like, wow, I still got some decent pace, which was a little surprising. I didn't have too much practice. I think I put in maybe half an hour before the official practice. So yeah, it was great. I knew I needed to get into the lead fast. That was so important because if you sit behind and bide your time, you're allowing the guys behind you to close the gap. And I knew that they probably had a pace advantage anyway by a few tenths over one lap. So I had to get in front and I had to pull away. And yeah, that's pretty much what I did. I think I brought Chris along with me. He was hanging on to my toe, and I was just pumping in laps. I wasn't looking at anyone else's lap times. I knew that they were coming, but I didn't want to look at the delta to see where they were. I could see they were gaining like a tenth or two a lap in the train, in the slipstream train. But yeah, just a little bit frustrating with the pit stops. I don't think it would have made a huge difference, and maybe I wouldn't have caught Daniel. Daniel had amazing pace, so yeah, congrats to him. That was an awesome race from him. I knew that once he got in my draft, which he did, he got a draft from Chris or somebody, and then he was there. I knew that he was going to pass, and so I just thought I'd try and save a bit of fuel behind him. But yeah, still, fifth is a great result, and especially after last week, my race was ended by someone else after 30 seconds. So yeah, very happy to take some nice points and be leading for so long as well. That was very enjoyable.
Oh, indeed. I mean, we absolutely loved seeing you up there scrapping and earning yourself some absolutely brilliant points, like you say. So it means you end the first half of the season on a high. And as we look ahead now to the second half of the season, what has been your highlight pair of rounds or evening? Has this been it, or has there been a moment earlier on that's your highlight?
The first part of the season, besides this race, has been terrible. It's been pretty bad. I felt like last week was really good. I had good pace. I put a decent amount of practice in. Pace was good, and then yeah, the race was just finished, and the feature race was finished by turn 3. There was a huge crash, and that was it. It wiped out so many cars. But this weekend was definitely a positive. I felt very comfortable straight away, and yeah, it was just a solid weekend. And obviously didn't get the podium, didn't get the win, but leading for a long portion and fighting with the top guys, it was nice to be back at the top.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we'd love to see you back at the top. And I do have to ask, can we expect that again next time out when we make our way to Summit Point Raceway?
It's a very anticlimactic answer, but I don't think I can make next week. So I might have to give it a miss, which is a real shame because that is an awesome circuit. I think everyone loves Summit Point. I'm not sure what race is after, but I think I'll be back in 2 weeks' time. I may be able to make it next week, but I think it's highly unlikely. So yeah, best of luck to everyone taking part in that one.
Well, George, if you can make it next week, we'd love to see you there. But if not, we will see you again later on this season. No doubt about it. Don't leave us hanging too long. But as I just get ready to let you go, as always, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast?
Shout out firstly to yourself, Paul, for giving the broadcast, and of course everyone in that pack. Daniel for the win. Everyone else for some nice clean racing. Had a good race with Brian and a little bit with Adam, so that was fun. And yeah, just everyone watching.
Well, George, it's been an absolute pleasure having you join me as our first interview of tonight. Congratulations once again on your performances, particularly that brilliant drive to a top 5 finish in the feature race. Indeed, it's the George Mattock of old coming back little by little. We may miss you next week, but we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. And until then, my friend, have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you. See you soon.
So here and there, ladies and gents, and from George Mattock, the enthusiasm is infectious, I can tell you that. And right now, I think if we said to him, do you want to do it all over again tonight? I think he'd say, give him a bit of a rest, but then he'd love to do it again. Because tonight, whilst it didn't go quite right in qualifying, he loved the one-lap shootout format, even with the fact he didn't get a valid time on the board with contact to wall, the risk versus reward, and the fact it really puts drivers on an absolute knife edge to qualify. And when he did go racing, well, race number 1, it was all about targeting and getting into that inverted grid. Not finishing 15th, finishing perhaps a little bit ahead because of the way the points work in the championship, although he still needs to study the book a little bit, but he made sure to be comfortably within that space, so that way he could be at the front of the field going into race number 2, and there's where he thrived. Now, he openly admitted he did put a bit too much fuel in the pits, perhaps a little bit too cautious, but to be fair, that caution guaranteed he'd finish inside that top 5, and what about it was between him and Steff Hermann for 4th place, but in the end he had to settle for 5th. He's going to miss Summit Point, but we'll see him back soon, and I reckon, ladies and gentlemen, George Massac is going to be a weapon to be contended with all the way through to the very end of the season, if not for just top 5s, then definitely for top 10s. But we've got another interview to come. Who's it going to be with? We're about to find out. And so, ladies and gents, we now come to our second interviewee, and it's going to be with none other than, I do believe, Bryan Kelly. We're just waiting for confirmation he can definitely make it, and if he can, well, we'd love to get a quick word with Bryan Kelly. I think we will be able to, and in fact, we cut to him now. Good afternoon to you, Bryan, and well, what a day, home soil, and it seems as though the results have started to swing your way once again. But how was it for you in Detroit?
This is such a difficult track with the wall so close. I'm happy that I kept it out of the wall in the second race at least. But yeah, that heat race got just a little bit too close between, I think it was Geoff and Marcus. But great battling, a lot of fun. But yeah, this is a interesting track with the wall so close.
Oh, indeed. I mean, the threat of the walls always looms large. And in terms of that threat, talking a little bit about our one-lap shootout qualifying session, you put it 4th in qualifying, a great result there. But did it feel as though there was a lot more pressure compared to our other qualifying sessions?
Yeah, to do the one-lap shootout on a street track is it's tough because you really have to manage the risk. It's so easy to lose this car specifically on cold tires. And with the wall so close, if you start sliding at all, that'll be your qualifying done. So it was it was tough to find the pace. I'm happy with 4th. Anything in the top 5, I'm always going to be happy with. But yeah, I'm really impressed with. I think it was Adam and Daniel. I can't remember if it was Tim as well. That they were just flying on their qualifying laps.
Well, they may have been flying, but they weren't quite able to fly away from the field in race number 1, and we saw plenty of battling, and you found yourself right in the thick of it. I mean, you mentioned only moments ago the fact it got a little bit fierce between yourself and a couple of your rivals, but from your perspective, when you've got a top 10 separated by no more than around 7 to 8 seconds altogether, I mean, you're probably thinking to yourself, I'm not looking at the guy in front of me, I'm looking at the cars 3, 4 in front of me, thinking, I want to be up there.
Yeah, especially with these long straights, the draft is really a big factor here. So it's kind of, especially when you're getting near the end of the race, you're kind of thinking, okay, where do I wanna be in this pack? Because yeah, if you get a really good draft onto the first or second straights, you can make a pass happen pretty easy. It's not like some of our more recent technical tracks, where it's really track position is king. This one is, the draft is definitely a factor.
Well, the draft, as you say, a factor, but in the end, it saw you shuffle down a little bit to 7th place, so perhaps not the result you were looking for in the sprint compared to how your race started, but of course, the feature. Now, I've got to ask, opening lap. Into turn 3, a bit of an instant further down the field behind yourself. Everyone mostly survived it. Turn number 7, however, a corner of nightmares for many. Where were you in all of that?
I was right next to it. So I think I was going too wide into that corner, and then I saw the incident happen, and I just had to slam on the brakes. I don't know if somebody rear-ended me or not. I saw some contact pop up, but I managed to dodge the majority of the cars that were sideways. So I got pretty lucky through there, and I'm really impressed with, I think it was Daniel ended up catching up after that, so he had some crazy pace.
Well, you're able to survive it, like you say, literally by a hair's whisker. And as the race then went on, we did see what was the intrigue, perhaps, of nobody wanted to pit early here today compared to what we've seen at other circuits. But flip side of the coin, of course, being the fact that when people pitted, they seemed to pit in pairs. Yourself and one of the other drivers around you couldn't quite catch who it was pitted together. Was that always part of the plan, or did you have to improvise a bit?
It was Tim. I know Tim he's very fast, and he can be aggressive when battling for track position. So when I saw him catch up, and he was, I think, he was right on my tail. At that point, I was like, well, we're in a train. I can't move forward. I can only move backwards from here. So I just wanted to get out of there and get in the pit. Tim, I think, followed me in. I'm not sure what happened. It seemed like he had a slower stop. But yeah, I was definitely trying to fuel save up to that point because everybody around me was quick, and I didn't see trying to battle for position through these tight streets really going anywhere. So I just started fuel saving pretty early on and was hoping that that would put me forward.
Oh, 100%. You're spot on there with Tim Hendrickson having a 3.5 second longer pit stop than yourself because of the fuel he'd used up in trying to get to that point from the back of the field. But as you came back out and we saw all the pit stops complete, in the end, it was for second place between yourself, Marcus Byfeldt, and Steff Hermann and George Mattock. Those last couple of laps, I mean, they were incredible. Yourself and Marcus going side by side through corners that nobody normally goes too wide through.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Marcus. He's a very good driver. There's in the heat race as well. We were going side by side. He really knows how to position his car well. And yeah, going through that final complex of corners, I just couldn't quite hold it on the outside, and he was able to clear me. So I was kind of thinking, oh man, this is done. But it seems like he must have ran out of fuel coming out of the final corner there, and I managed to get past him just on fuel. So I got pretty lucky there. But yeah, Marcus, he's a great driver. He's definitely tough to battle with.
Well, you managed to get past him in the end and land a second place. A return to the top step of the podium is still perhaps in the post. However, looking back over the opening 12 rounds, if you had to pick one race event that's your highlight, which one would it be?
I would say the race win that I had. I think that was Bolton.
Yes.
If I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. So I think anytime I get a win, that's always a great feeling with such good strong competition here. So yeah, that's definitely been the highlight. I would say this was a pretty good one, even though I feel pretty nervous on street tracks. I can't complain about how I finished here today.
All fair play. And of course, we stay in the USA now for a few race meetings. Next up is the Summit Point Raceway in West Virginia. What can we expect from you there?
I think Summit Point is probably one of the most classic tracks on iRacing. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think everybody knows that track like the back of their hand. So everybody's going to be really fast. It's going to be really tough. Track position is going to be huge there. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting battle. I have a feeling fuel saving in the feature race is probably going to play a pretty big factor. So it'll be interesting to see what pit strategies we see in that race.
Oh, 100%. I'm with you on that. And Brian, as we just get ready to let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a mention to on the broadcast today?
Yeah, thanks so much for broadcasting. These are so fun to watch. And then, yeah, I just got to say, shout out to Marcus and Daniel. Marcus, he's great battling with, a lot of fun there. And then Daniel was just so impressive with his pace, finishing second and first today. That's such a great result for him.
Well, I'm sure both will appreciate the shout out from yourself, and we massively appreciate your time in the interview room, Brian. Congratulations once again on a solid pair of performances, particularly that drive to second place in the feature. We look forward to even more next time we're back at Summit Point. But until then, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Paul.
So hearing there, ladies and gentlemen, from Bryan Kelly, the privateer, who today enjoyed the qualifying sessions, put it full, he was pleased with that, but really in respect and awe of those who managed to make up the top three. But in the races, well, in the sprint, as he mentioned there, he was right in the thick of the fighting. However, it got a bit fierce, and that meant the places he was looking for just gradually walked away a little bit. However, he wasn't disheartened, and as he made his way into the feature race, well, initially it was about survival, with the big Turn 7 incident occurring right alongside him, and if it played out slightly differently, differently, he could have been the one collecting it, but not quite so. So he went on instead to try and drive his way through the field, and we saw him pit with Tim Hendrickson and mentioned there perhaps his consideration of the fact that Tim does have a tenacity for batting for position, and therefore he wanted to see by coming in whether he'd be able to work with the man or break away from him, and it was the latter given the nature of the length of their pit stops. And for Bryan Kelly, it was a battle for second place between himself and Marcus Byfeldt, which he won in the end by a slender margin, and he does feel as though it's a huge accomplishment, but also in respect there of both Marcus's battling ability and that of Daniel Atuga to take a second in the sprint and the win in the feature. So we look forward to more from Bryan Kelly. He definitely has a lot of respect for his rivals, and he makes him such a great racer. But we're going to be coming to another great racer very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back within 10 seconds. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to our third interview of the evening, and joining me in the interview room is none other than Adam Miles. Good evening to you, Adam, and what a day of racing from yourself. A win in the sprint after just missing out on pole in qualifying, the feature a 7th place, but a very challenging day of racing. So many battles going on. I mean, you probably didn't know where to look in any of the events today.
I don't know. I mean, once Tim's computer decided to do me a favour in the sprint race, I felt fairly comfortable in the one-on-one with Daniel. But yeah, the sprint race was the feature race was definitely something different to the sprint race. It was unfortunate that the crash in lap 1 put me so far back. I think it was about 9.5 seconds off the lead by the end of lap 1. So trying to make that back as best we can was really the aim of the day.
I see. And before we got to the racing, of course, qualifying, 2nd place overall, but it's a one-lap shooter, and we've seen you be one of the strongest qualifying drivers of the season. I have to ask, how did it feel, the one-lap format? Did it feel as though there was just that much more pressure to get the job done?
I don't know there was much pressure. I mean, it's always sketchy in this car on cold tyres, and given that a 0x, just a tiny kiss of the wall doesn't even have to be that hard, will invalidate the lap. So you just have to leave a little bit of margin. But it wasn't really the walls that was my problem. I just turned into the penultimate corner and bumped over the apex curve, which lost me probably a 10th or a 10th.5. So that was the difference to pole. It was just a silly mistake. The car just gripped a little more than I thought, and just rode the curve, which bumped the car, and then to be honest, after that I was surprised to even get P2.
All fair play. Well, it may have been a little bit of a surprise, but flip side of the coin was from there we saw a brilliant three-way fight between yourself and also Tim Hendrickson and Daniel Atuga in the sprint race. Although before it went wrong for Tim, that three-way fight, we saw Tim very firm at wanting to lead, but I mean, you were giving him as good as he was giving you.
I don't know how much it came across on the broadcast, but I think the three of us had spotted that Steff, I think in 4th, had dropped about 2 seconds back. So we were swapping, but we weren't really fighting. I don't think, not before Tim, had his issue. So I think it was really just position swapping up to that point. But maybe down into turn 2, or turn 3 rather, it looks more like a fight than it actually was.
Oh, fair play. And unfortunately, it went wrong for Tim, but for yourself and Daniel, it would then be a battle that would build to the finish. But you managed to get the one up on him there. And, well, then, of course, starting 15th for race number 2. The opening lap, blighted a bit by the major incident at turn 7. Where did you find yourself in it?
Quite a few places behind it. So by the time I'd come around the right-hander, the track just looked blocked. Couldn't really... I had Steff, I think, just in front of me. And I could see the accident on the left-hand side. Steff hit the brakes, as was reasonable. And so I hit the brakes, and then I was lucky not to get rear-ended by the person behind me. So there was a lot of checking up going on, and there was just a car's width on the right-hand side for me to slip through. But by the time that had happened, and then I think we probably lost at least another 3 seconds with, I think it might have been Frankie D. He was bringing a broken car back to the pits and stayed on the racing line, pulled over, and then just took the apex around the final 2 corners. So it was heavily lifting, braking, just trying to navigate my way around him. So by the time we'd got onto the main straight and he pitted, I think, it was about 9.5 seconds, which when Daniel's up front, there wasn't really any realistic chance of overhauling the entire gap.
It was unfortunate, and whilst you may not have been able to overhaul the entire gap, you did a good job, to be fair, to get yourself back into that top 10. Although, by the looks of things, because we normally associate you with using the undercut, I presume you had to go to a bit of a plan B here just to try and find some time.
Yeah, I switched to a fuel-saving strategy pretty much at the end of lap 1. I had Steff and Tim in front of me, which I thought, that's great. You know, two drivers with good pace. I will just use this to fuel save the entire stint. So was able to, I mean, to be honest, Tim was quick. So I think we actually got the gap down from 9 something to about 5 something by the stop. So we got half the gap down, and I'd saved so much fuel. I was pretty confident about coming out in P2 after the stops. But unfortunately, one other driver wanted to do one more lap. I had Christopher in front of me, and he ran out of fuel with about 3 corners to go in the lap, and again proceeded to defend his position without fuel like it was the last lap. So I lost another 3 seconds just through the final sector trying to navigate him spluttering around the last few corners. So unfortunately, rather than coming out P2, I came out something like P5 or P6, which was not where I should have come out, and then just ended up fighting with George, fighting with Geoff, fighting with Tim, so it became a bit of a knife fight at the end, which, yeah, it's annoying because it was just for the sake of 2 or 3 seconds I'd have been up the road. So not ideal, but, you know, I did manage 2 incident-free races and both fastest laps, so picked up a good haul of bonus points, which sort of offset some of the disappointment from race 2.
Oh, 100%. And just on that, I mean, Adam, you find this magical way. I don't know how you do it, and perhaps you could explain. Particularly towards the end, they're fighting so fiercely with Tim Hendrickson through particularly some of the tighter sections of the lap. No instant points and still managing fastest laps as well as the race goes on. I mean, you just have this knack to be able to keep the cleanest possible sheet possible in the race, but also do some of the best side-by-side out there. How do you do it?
I mean, you've got to trust the drivers around you. I mean, I trust Geoff, I trust George, I trust Tim, Steff, Daniel, you know, whoever's around me. There aren't really any drivers who I'm worried about putting it side by side with. So, you know, lift when you have to, keep your nose in there when you have to. Just give the other drivers room, and they tend to give you room back. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great bunch of drivers here. Same's true of the officials, to be honest, as well. So, yeah, just treat other drivers with respect, and they tend to do the same.
I'll 100% agree with you on that. And of course, we've now crossed the halfway threshold of the season. We look ahead to our next round, or pair of rounds in a week's time at Summit Point. What can we expect from you there?
I mean, it's a classic. I don't know if there's any track on the service where the Skippy's been more times than Summit Point, so no practice required there. Geoff did mention there was going to be a chance of rain, which I imagine he has programmed into the forecast. So I've done wet races at Summit Point in the Skippy before and gone well. So yeah, looking forward to a bit of slip and slide next week.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we definitely look forward to seeing you getting up there, particularly if the wet weather does arrive. But just as we get ready to let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a thank you or a shout out to on the broadcast?
Yourself, of course. I will make some dinner and watch the race back, or both races back. Thank you to Geoff, of course, for organising everything, and yeah, thank you to my partner who is not with me at the moment, but she will be soon, and so thank you to her for tolerating the Skip Barber racing day in, day out.
Oh, indeed. Well, we have to say a big thank you to yourself, Adam, for joining us as always, not just on circuit, but in the interview room. Congratulations once again on a solid day of racing, particularly that win in the sprint. We'll see you at Summit Point to see whether you can slip and slide your way to the win. But until then, have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, Paul.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Adam Miles, who today, well, I think that brief bit of replay there just demonstrated how fierce the fighting was and what he had to contend with trying to make his way through the field. But talking about there the fact, and then qualifying at that second place, well, he gave it his all, but not quite all what he could have given, and perhaps just playing it a little bit safe to guarantee the lap was there, given the fact you only need to tap the walls at Detroit, and you'll suddenly end up with a 0x wall contact, and that invalidates your qualifying lap. So he didn't want to risk losing out and having to fight his way through the field, and then going into the first race, well, it was a three-way pack, constantly swapping places back and forth, until it all went wrong for Tim Hendrickson, and then it was a two-way fight between himself and Daniel Atuga, where he came out on top. As for the feature race, unfortunately, was in the right place at the wrong time, so had to queue up with the incident at turn number 7, and in the end, it was all about the recovery drive, which he had almost mastered for the run to a top 5 and not the podium, if it were not for the fact, unfortunately, some late battling before his pit stop just cost him the 2 to 3 seconds that Adam felt he needed to be in that group for the podium spots, and that was the difference. Still, as we see the wonderful 3 to 4 way fighting replay footage here, with Adam Miles completely backing out, playing it safe, he takes the bonus points, of course, for having an absolutely clean pair of races today, and also the fastest laps, and therefore for Adam Miles, if he can't win with regards to the results on the podium, he can definitely win by way one of the cleanest drivers out there, and those bonus points will definitely be benefiting him as the season goes on. Well, we've got one more interview to come, ladies and gentlemen, and, well, without further ado, we'll step aside and we'll be back within the next minute or two. In fact, it'll be another 10 seconds. And so here we go, ladies and gentlemen, for our final interview of the day. We are joined by none other than the man behind the scenes. It is Geoff Randall. Good evening to you, Geoff. And, well, what a pair of races today. I mean, we've heard from 3 of our other drivers who absolutely loved it, and you were right in the thick of all the madness as well. I mean, you must be knackered by now.
Oh, do you know, I am going to have to, I've said it a couple of times, I'm going to have a lie down in the darkened room tonight, because that was absolutely epic. I love the place. It creates so much good racing, and it didn't disappoint at all tonight. No, not one little bit. It was amazing.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, of course, we started off the day with the one-lap shootout qualifying session, first of those for the season. And a number of our drivers have said how much they've loved the risk versus reward factor of it. 8th place for yourself in the qualifying session. How did you find it? Because it looked as though you're a little bit further back from where we normally see you.
I was being a bit too cautious, I think. I was making quite sure that I was staying well away from the walls. I didn't want to be starting at the back here. So I just kind of I backed off a fair bit more than I should have done, but I just wanted to make sure they got clean lapping. I must admit, when I finished my lap, I thought, oh, that'll be okay. And then people were coming in like nearly a second ahead, and I thought, okay, yeah, I didn't push it quite hard enough. But yeah, some really good times out there. To get in the 43s with a one-lap situation, that's a great effort from the guys at the front.
So a great effort from those in front, but still a solid effort from yourself to make sure you're inside that top 10 for race 1. And in the sprint race, I mean, it all looked very much swap back and forth in the early stages for several groups of drivers. But for yourself in the end, you gradually moved forward there. Was that the pace that you didn't use in qualifying coming through?
No, to be honest. All I was conscious of doing was staying in touch, because it's so hard to get a clean overtake when you're sat in a queue of cars here. It's really, really hard to get past. So what you're relying on is either someone in front making a mistake, or the guy in front having a go at the guy in front of them and taking advantage and poking your nose in and being a bit rude, really. That's the only way to get past. And that was the only way that I managed to get from 8th to 5th, was taking advantage of the people, the guys in front being a little bit slower. I know there was one incident with Bryan where we looked like we were going to go 3 wide, going into, I think, turn 4.
Yes.
And I tried to stay as inside as possible, and Bryan just came across me. I chatted with him about it, and he said he wasn't expecting me to stay in there, and that's why we made contact. But yeah, we're all. I mean, he's all good with that. It was a racing incident, I think, but that was the only contact throughout the whole race, which was pretty impressive, really, considering everyone was so close.
Oh, indeed. I mean, you've preempted our question. We were going to ask about that brief moment between yourself and Bryan Kelly, but it's great that you two have been able to talk through it in the cool-down room. But a 5th place in the end, having to poke your nose into places as you went, and then going into the feature, of course, starting in what would have been 11th place, it all went wrong for quite a few drivers on the open lap. Where were you in all of it?
I just went through it incredibly lucky. I just happened to be in the right place in the track. Nathan went barreling into the back of Kevin. I mean, I saw the incident was I think one of the Dutch guys just caught the wall and bounced back into the middle of the track. to be honest, in that situation, there's nothing that the guys behind could have done. I think I can't remember who was the first person to go into. I think it was Titus, but I just happened to be on the inside, and there was a gap that was about the size of a skip barber, and I managed to squeeze the car through, and off I went. And finished with I think a 0x in that race, so managed to get a clean race bonus as well.
Indeed, managed to just survive being caught up in that, and like you say, just being in the right place at the right time to avoid being caught up. But then afterwards, what we saw was a bit of an interesting spread of the top 10, where the leaders gradually pulling away because they hadn't been impacted by it. Yourself in really the second pack trying to get closer and closer. And then as the race goes on, nobody wants to undercut. Everybody's trying to go as long as possible. I mean, did it feel a bit strange to yourself? Because normally we see a lot of shuffling over the 15 to 20 minute window, but in this one, nobody seemed to want to come in.
I was toying with the idea of coming in, but behind me was Tim Hendrickson and Adam and Steff in a pack of 3. And I wanted to time my stop either on the same lap. I couldn't tell if they were going to come in, so I thought to myself, I'm going to wait for them to pit and then pit straight afterwards and try and get on the back of those guys, so that hopefully I could kind of drag to the front. But that didn't pan out. It ended up that we all pitted at slightly different times. I think I went in and then came out, and when I came out, I joined up with, I can't remember who it was, but Brian then pitted and he came out and joined up with me. And then Adam came out and joined up with everyone. It was just incredible that we all managed to kind of join up together. We had a really good scrap towards the end.
Oh, 100%. And on that, I mean, it was incredible how we did go from what was, before all the pit stops wrapped up, a field that was gradually splitting apart to suddenly second through to 10th separated by no more than 5 seconds. And then Daniel Toogood obviously not got the script and walked off with the lead. But the point being that so close, and between yourself, Adam Miles and Tim Hendrickson, the 3 of you trying to go 2-3 wide at quarters where you don't need to go too wide at the closing stages. I mean, it must have had your heart absolutely beating out your chest.
It did. I mean, on the final lap, it was myself, Adam, and Tim 3 wide going up into turn 2, I think, the tight right-hander. I had a little tangle with Adam going up the start finish, it's not the start finish straight, it's the second straight. I had a little tangle with him. Our wheels kind of caught up, which gave him a bit of a momentum, and he came up the inside. No one really wanted to back out, but I think we all gave each other enough room and enough respect because we all made it to the end. But yeah, it was cracking racing. I didn't want to take anyone out. I don't think anyone else wanted to take anyone out. So it was just a case of staying alive towards that end and accepting wherever you finish. So taking an 8th all day long.
Oh, 100%. I agree with you on that. It was an incredible race, and the respect shown was absolutely brilliant. And with now the first half of the season complete, when you do look back upon the season, what have been perhaps your highlight pair of rounds or evening?
Well, I had a couple of third places somewhere. Donington, I think. Can't remember, actually. No, it wasn't Donington. That was a disaster.
Alton.
It was Alton, wasn't it? Yeah, so a couple of third places at Alton. Thank you for clarifying that one. Getting old, I forget. But yeah, so that would have been the highlight so far. But tonight's racing, I think, beats all of that. It was just superb. The whole racing from start to finish was just epic. I want to give a quick shout out to Daniel as well for managing to win that by near on a clear 6 seconds. What an effort! I know he loves it here. So I was figuring he was going to be somewhere near the top, but to win that by 6 seconds, great effort.
Well, I think he'll appreciate the shout out. And just coming back to, of course, what lies ahead. Next up, we open up the second half of the season at Summit Point. We heard from Adam Miles only months ago saying it's probably the most synonymous circuit with the skippies. What can we expect from you there?
Hoping that it's going to be somewhere near the front again. I like it at Summit Point. I've checked the weather forecast. It looks like it might be a bit wet there. Not quite sure, but so yeah, beware. There could be a few drops of rain. If it does, that suits me. I like the rain. Yeah, looking forward to it. I think it's a cracking skippy track, probably one of the best skippy tracks out there. So yeah, I think we can get a decent field there. It should be really, really good fun.
Oh, fantastic. And well, the last question, as always, we have to ask is there anyone you'd like to, beyond Daniel Tuga, give a shout out or a mention to on the broadcast?
Yeah, of course, yourself, Paul, for all the work you do behind the scenes. Really appreciate it. And to all the drivers for showing up and making this thing what it is. My fabulous wife for supporting me. She's the best. And yeah, that'll do nicely. I'll leave it on that.
Well, Geoff, it's been an absolute blast to have you join me in the interview room. It always is. Congratulations once again on a solid pair of results today. May not have been podiums, but to be fair, you're in the thick of it and you enjoyed it, and that's what matters most. We'll see you at Summit Point, but until then, have a great rest of your evening.
Great stuff. Thanks, Paul.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from none other than Geoff Randall for the old Get Racing team, and indeed one of your senior admins behind the series, who's definitely kept the Skip Barber Community Trophy going for now what is its 5th season. And I can tell you one thing, his own words there, the fact that in the end he's going to have to go sleep in a dark room this evening, and that will be because of how close the race has been. I think the excitement levels have just been turned up to maximum in these cars today at Detroit. I mean, Belle Isle always delivers, and it has delivered here. And mentioned as well in the one-lap shootout, the fact played it quite conservatively. A lot of drivers did, it would look like, just to make sure they got a lap on the board. But what a race it created in the sprint, and that fight for 5th in the end really coming along for our 107 driver. In the feature, you mentioned there the fact that where he was in what happened on the open lap really was in a gap, a Skippy-sized gap that he was able to thread the needle into. And after that, Sonny really created a unique race. In fact, we saw all the field gradually split apart inside that top 10, only for it to all come back together right at the end of the race in those final 6 minutes. And well, everywhere you looked, everyone was fighting. And Geoff Randall mentioned in there one thing and one thing only: you'll take the place that you get at the end, because if you survive battling that close and no contacts at all, well, it just goes to show you've had a good race. And I suspect at some point with the risk of rain, the racing's only going to get more intense, if not a little bit wet. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes all of our interviews for today. And as we do wrap up our interviews, let's give you a recap of who we've spoken to. And as we can see, we've had an absolutely brilliant array of interviews tonight. We started off with George Mattock, our driver who didn't set a qualifying lap in the end, but he came all the way through the field to 13th in the sprint, and that gave him the chance to take his first top 5 of the season in the feature race. Well done to him. We then heard from Bryan Kelly, who enjoyed a great race on home soil and is excited for the more to come now after that 2nd place in the feature race. We also spoke to Adam Miles, the man who took the win in the sprint race. A bit unfortunate to see Tim Hendrickson fall by the wayside, but he mentioned there the fact there was great racing, and in the end, when it came down between himself and Daniel Tuga, he also enjoyed that, even if it was a bit of a shuffle down the order in the feature race due to the open lap incident. And then we also heard from Geoff Randall there, who actually enjoyed both races right in the thick of the fighting, and well, he couldn't complain about any of it. A huge thank you to all 4 of our drivers for their time in the interview room this evening, and congratulations to them all on their results. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to wrap up. But before we do, we are going to take a look back at the championship standings provisionally after our first 12 rounds, and here they are. And now, with the first half of the season complete, well, what we can see here is provisionally for your top 15, Steff Hermann is the man who leads by an advantage that has stayed at practically the same as how it came into today, albeit with the addition of a single point. Steff Hermann is going to be the man to beat, and our prophecy of the fact that because everyone's tripping over each other to fight for second, can he just hold his lead up there? It seems to be ringing true. But of course, the pressure will stay on him for another 12 rounds when we come back next week at the Summit Point Raceway, and he'll know just as much as anyone that to be leading, he's got to keep on finishing. Marcus Byfeldt, meanwhile, 14 points ahead of Bryan Kelly. The 2 stayers, they were coming into this round, but they both know one thing is that they're trying to pull away, but they're never going to get away from Adam Miles, who's a further 7 points adrift, and Adam Miles right now definitely continuing to build that momentum, and we're seeing more and more wins come his way, as well as podiums. Geoff Randall sits in 5th, may not have made it onto the podium today. He's fallen back slightly behind Miles, however he's only 10 points adrift, but in turn, he is now the best part of what is 39 points ahead of Daniel Tuga, but Tuga will know with the big score he picked up in the feature race day, plus his 2nd place in the sprint, that it could be now his time to charge. He's ahead of Nathan Wade, and then earmarks the rest of the field as led by himself. He sits in 7th by the best part of 16 points over Adam Tompkins, and it's Christopher Gerrits Jr. and Gordon von den Bergen who complete that top 10. Von den Bergen may only be a point behind Gerrits Jr., and in turn he's 16 points ahead of Remco Placier, who in turn has his teammate Titus de Jong directly behind him, with the 2 drivers from Raging Turtle Racing having a nightmare day at the office, and will be hoping for plenty more next round. Peter Suapanki, George Mattock and Dennis Johansson complete that top 15, and a special mention there to George Mattock, who's moved up from 17th to 14th, with that 5th place finish in the feature race giving him a huge haul of points. And indeed, if he can finish in the top 5 going forward, understandably, he'll be sighting the top 10 in the championship by the end of the season. So that's how the top 15 stands coming out of this round. And as we look to the rest of the top 30, Chris Wayne there sits in 16th place ahead of Josephine Becker, who wasn't on the grid today, and Neil Gardner as well on 71 points, 5 behind, but a comfortable what is 12 ahead of Martin van Eekelen. Marcus Dorner completes the top 20 ahead of Kevin Budgeon, who picked up some solid points, particularly with a top 10 in the sprint race. And we did see there Tim Hendrickson once again fighting fit and going all in. He took pole position today, but he couldn't quite back out with wins, but he could have perhaps in the sprint race if technical issues hadn't blighted him. We'll keep our eyes out for Tim as the season goes on, because surely at some point he's going to pick up a win. Jesus Cabal, Tom Payne and Simon Wareham complete the top 25 ahead of Ludwig Sout and Frederick Neptun. And then we do have Drennan Wellink, Neil Bamber and Frankie D completing that top 30. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now do truly wrap up here and look forward to plenty more as the season goes on. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and perhaps you're sat there wanting to know more about the Skip Barber Community Trophy in terms of how you can be on the grid and join in all the fun and action on a weekly basis, well, we definitely recommend you join the official Discord, invite link available on screen. And if you do, you will not find a more friendly community of drivers, whether you are a novice to the Skippy through to a fully fledged veteran. There's a place for you on the grid, and indeed, when we've got veterans all the way through to novices racing the season currently, there's never been a better time to join the Skip Barber Community Trophy. We'd also like to take a moment and say a big thank you to our sponsors for this series, who do include, of course, Musical Money firstly. And to tell you a little bit more about Musical Money, well, we can tell you that the quick, easy and safe way to turn your unwanted musical equipment into money is with Musical Money, because no matter what your equipment may be, if you want to sell it, Musical Money is there to buy it, thereby taking the hassle out of selling your unwanted musical equipment. And with their groundbreaking website, as shown on screen, selling your musical equipment could not be easier for a website which has put the user experience at the core of its design. So why not check out www.musical-money.co.uk today to find out more and make your way to selling your musical equipment in 3 easy steps. Now, we also do want to say a big thank you to our other sponsor, and that is none other than the Old Git Racing Team. Established in 2024, Old Git Racing Team aims to prove that age is just a number in the world of racing. Headed by Geoff Randall, the team races in multiple disciplines but is especially dedicated to the Skip Barber Formula 2000 machine. Regardless of the car, they aim to keep their racing fair and close, whilst also respecting the fact that mistakes can happen to even the very best. So if you'd like to know more about the team, be sure to head to their Twitch channel, and that's on screen, and their Twitch channel being none other than www.twitch.tv/oldgitracer, where you can check out their racing, including their onboard perspectives from the Skip Barber Community Trophy. And with that, a huge thank you, of course, to both of our title sponsors for this season. And we look now ahead to what is to come to kick off the second half of the season in a week's time. And where exactly is it? Well, it is none other than the Summit Point Raceway. We make our way then to West Virginia from Michigan, and what will be in the local Jefferson County Forestry. We'll see our drivers take on the circuit that has been the mainstay of the series for many a season for rounds 13 and 14. Will the risk of rain, however, could it mix things up? Well, we'll find out on Sunday the 1st of February 2026 as we bring you all the race in action as it unfolds. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, you've been tuning in to the Skip Barber Community Trophy. I've been your host, Paul Walsh. You've been tuning in to a Paul Walsh production. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.